From a family of fishermen and farmers to the true immortal of water and virtue, this video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 326, Sword Sect Negotiations. Taiyin Banner, Giant and Magic Weapon. Taking the moonlight of Taiyin and condensing it like silk, interweaving it into a banner, can be used as a life magic weapon, and its power increases as the host's cultivation level increases. The banner surface is unfolded, deep and dark, and can gather the Taiyin energy between heaven and earth, forming its own domain space, suppressing many enemies, and can also assist cultivators in condensing the moonlight to practice and speed up their practice. Li Quanqing touched the light ball suspended on the clamshell, and the touch was as smooth and elastic as before. After breaking through the middle stage of foundation building, the breath of the 1,000-year-old bright moon shell became stronger, swallowing and spitting out water, polishing the bright pearl in the shell. He thought about this giant and magic weapon, which he would definitely not need, and he had no shortage of yuanying spiritual treasures. This Taiyin banner is very suitable for Aoking to use. It is also of Taiyin attribute, and can be used as a life magic weapon of King Gyuqiu. Monsters can also control human magic tools and magic weapons. As long as they are forcibly refined with demonic energy, they can also stimulate great power. He crushed the ball of light, and after the light dissipated, a jet black jade stick was revealed, which was about 10 feet long and crystal clear. There were many words and patterns engraved on the surface of the jade stick, which were densely packed, telling how to refine the Taiyin spirit banner, worship the moon and practice, and it was shining like a star. This stick can also be used as one of the main materials. It only needs to condense the moonlight day and night, weave a long banner, and engrave the Deo mark and instrument pattern. No other natural materials are needed. Li Quanqing handed the jade stick to Aoking. This guy howled, with a puzzled face, and didn't quite understand his master's intention. Teach you to refine the instrument, and treat it as your own life magic weapon in the future. Li Quanqing took the Taiyin jade stick, and knocked on King Zhao's head, making a thumping sound, and finally made this guy understand his situation. Aoking stared at him with a pair of aggrieved eyes, looking at him innocently, saying that he didn't want to refine this thing, and wanted his master to do it himself. Li Quanqing naturally would not agree. How could such a thing as a life treasure be passed through the hands of outsiders? It must be completed by himself. Besides, he was lazy. This was also the first hurdle that those foundation building cultivators faced after they were promoted to the Golden Core, and they used the refining of magic weapons to prove their own way. In the end, Li Quanqing gave a deadline, limiting Aoking to refine this Taiyin spirit banner within 3 years. Of course, if the other party had any questions about refining, he could come and ask him at any time, which was regarded as teaching his own spirit beast to expand its knowledge. Li Quanqing walked on the embankment, and after feeding the bait, he practiced on the shore, and his whole body burst into a ray of aqua blue light. The tides between heaven and earth rose and fell, and the sea suppressing magic power was running, rushing in the meridians, making a sound like a big river, and finally all flowed into the Danshan, like 100 rivers converging into the sea. Li Quanqing carefully experienced this feeling, embracing everything. The vast sea was boundless, as if it was the source of all the water between heaven and earth. Like the incarnation of the great way of water. This is the law represented by Xianai true water. It really benefited him a lot. He was completely immersed in the practice, and was particularly intoxicated. With a gulp, Li Quanqing swallowed a Xianai pill. The pill dissolved in his stomach, and the rich medicinal power rose up, rolling like a tide, and spread into his limbs. After a night of practice, Li Quanqing benefited a lot, and his practice increased visibly. In a few decades, I will be able to break through the late Jiandan. Li Quanqing opened his eyes, and the golden morning sun fell, shining on the fish pond, with floating light and sparkling waves, which seemed quite dazzling. This period of time seemed very long, but in fact he was only over 80 years old. According to the lifespan of Jiandan cultivators, he was young enough. He looked up. It was still early in the morning, and the entire Qingyu cave heaven was busy welcoming the arrival of guests. Today was the day when the elders of Shuhua Sword Sect arrived in a group, and it was the other party who took the initiative to propose to discuss the division of territory and resources with the Li family. Or it would not be an exaggeration to say that he was asking for peace. Li Quanqing didn't care. With the current strength of the Li family, Shuhua Sword Sect had no room for negotiation. They could only hand over their territory and fall from the position of overlord. However, the old patriarch has now turned to practicing the way of God and has long been dead. It is not suitable for him to show up in public. In the end, he and Li Quanqing will be needed to take charge. Li Quanqing flicked his fingers, waved his sleeves, stood up from the embankment, and walked towards the Quanqing Hall. Meet the patriarch. Good day, patriarch. Along the way, many clansmen saw him and saluted, with respectful attitudes and full of admiration in their eyes. Li Quanqing smiled and nodded to them, with a kind attitude, which made people feel like spring breeze. Although he was not competent as a patriarch, his cultivation was high enough to become a banner in the eyes of everyone in the family. He came to the Quanqing Hall, where the clansmen were busy, and had almost arranged the place. Several foundation building monks were also there. After Li Quanqing greeted them, he walked straight to the empty back hall, and closed his eyes to meditate. Not long after, Li Quanqing also arrived here, and smiled at him. Wait a moment, and see what kind of storm these guys from Shuhua Sword Sect can stir up. The two chatted casually, not really caring, and even too lazy to show up. Not long after, accompanied by 9 bells ringing through the Qingyu cave heaven, the elders of Shuhua Sword Sect finally arrived. Even though the Sword Sect has lost the glory of the Gengjin sect, the Li family still gave the other party the highest etiquette standards, and did not neglect it. Li Quanqing sat cross-legged in the back hall. His spiritual consciousness spread like a spider web, penetrating every hole, and taking in the whole team. There were a total of 8 people from the Sword Sect, all of whom were foundation building cultivators. They seemed to have already shown their full potential, and did not want to be suppressed in terms of momentum. The person leading the way was Li Quanqing, who had not been seen for a long time. Now he had grown a beard, with a long beard fluttering, and his eyebrows and eyes looked like he had experienced many vicissitudes of life. Behind him was the elder of the Sword Sect, Duandangyang, who had always been very close to the Qingyu Li family. Now he had already reached the great perfection of the foundation building, and was extremely powerful. As for the foundation building cultivators welcomed by the Li family, they were headed by Li Quanli, Li Quanmo, Li Quanshu, and so on. Li Quanfu was also chosen for this negotiation, because he was born a businessman, and was more tactful in his words and deeds. Li Quanqing sat in the back hall, listening to these guys arguing and fighting for the resources of the immortal world. Although the Shuhua Sword Sect came to seek peace, it was a disguised surrender, but it must be tough at the beginning to show some backbone. However, there was one thing that both sides had a tacit understanding, that is, they were ready to push Li Quanqing to the position of the next sect leader. Li Quanqing was bored and looked at Li Quanli, who was also a little bored on the opposite side. He flipped his palm and took out the demon pill of the earth flame dragon. This is. Li Quanli looked at him in surprise, sensing the majestic demonic energy in the demon pill, burning like a sea of fire, with raging flames. The power of the energy was so strong that even he changed color slightly, sensing the horror in it. This is the fire attributed demon pill I obtained by killing a 3rd level demon beast. It can add another fake pill cultivator to the family. Li Quanli heard what he meant and hesitated for a moment. Such a precious treasure should be placed in the treasury, allowing the clan members to compete fairly. Is there a difference? Li Quanqing laughed. In terms of family contribution points, who can compare with us? The results are the same. Li Quanli shook his head and insisted on putting the demon pill into the treasury. Li Quanqing had no choice but to follow his advice, put the 3rd level demon pill back, and put it back into the treasury. It was at this time that the discussion in the hall also reached its climax. The Sword Sect was unwilling to change the name of this sea area and completely abandon the glory seized by the sect master's ancestors. The Li family refused to give up an inch of land and insisted on changing the name to Qingyu Sea area and completely occupying this tens of thousands of miles of territory. The elders of Shuhua Sword Sect were all red-faced and wanted to fight on the spot. Li Quanqing and the other two looked at each other and realized that it was time for them to make their appearance. With a rumble, they no longer concealed their own pressure, and it spread out like a tide, filling the entire hall. Chapter 327 Jade C. The pressure of the golden elixir spread out, instantly covering the entire hall, like a mountain pressing down on the top of the head, silent, and you could hear a pin drop. The Shuhuasi area will be renamed Kingyusi. Anyone who has any objections, please stand up. Li Quanqing's light voice echoed in the hall. Although he did not show up, the power of the golden elixir was like a tidal wave, like a heavy hammer hitting everyone's heart. The faces of the red-faced and thick-necked foundation-building cultivators of the Shuhua sword sect froze instantly. Everyone was submissive and lowered their heads, as if they had turned into quails. Li Quanqing snorted lightly, causing the entire hall to tremble. This matter has been decided, no need to discuss it further. Duan Dangyang smiled bitterly, but did not dare to say anything more. He saluted respectfully and said, in accordance with the decree of the real person, the sword sect should do its utmost to cooperate with the Li family and change the name of the sea area. Changing the name of a golden elixir sea area is not such a simple matter. It requires the original dominant force of this sea area to take the initiative, to ask the Gengjin sect to express its willingness to take the initiative to change it. For example, if the Shuhuasi area is renamed Kingyusi, the leader of the sword sect needs to personally report to the Yuanying sect, and after the approval is passed, the Gengjin sect will announce the summons and notify all the Jiandan forces under its command, announcing the birth of a brand new sea area, and many sea maps will also be changed accordingly. The process is quite troublesome. Therefore, for the cultivators of the sword sect, this is really a loss of face for the ancestors of the sect, and the glory is lost. However, the situation is stronger than people. Now there are no Jiandan cultivators in the sect, and they have suffered heavy losses in the previous beast tide. They can only accept their fate and make compromises. These guys are all dejected, looking like their parents have died, and some old guys even have red eyes and tears. Li Quanqing doesn't care about these. This time, the Li family has already taken what they should have. Not only did they successfully change the name to Kingyusi, but they also directly took away 90% of the sea areas and resource islands under the Shuhua sword sect. Directly from a 1000-year-old Jiandan sect, it has fallen into a stronger foundation building force. In the following years, unless the sword sect's luck goes against the sky and another talented disciple emerges and succeeds in forming a golden elixir with this little territory, it will be almost impossible for them to rise again. Li Quanqing looked at the familiar elders in the sect with a faint gaze. Even though he had been positioned as the next leader of the sword sect, his expression was still detached. He seemed like an outsider. Suddenly, he heard Li Quanqing's voice transmission. Go to the 10,000 fish pond. Someone is waiting for you. Li Quanqing frowned slightly. He hadn't been back to his hometown for a long time, and he didn't even know the location of the 10,000 fish pond. Who could be waiting for him? A maid quietly came to him, smiled sweetly, and bowed to guide him to the direction of the 10,000 fish pond. Li Quanqing retracted his gaze. This was the old patriarch's own family affair, and he naturally wouldn't interfere too much. As for whether Li Quanqing would deny the child and what attitude he would respond, that was not his concern. With the departure of the foundation building cultivators of the Shuhua sword sect, the Kingyuli clan also began a new expansion. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, many forces under the sword sect changed sides and competed to express their loyalty. The Gengjin sect also acted quickly. After only 1 year, they agreed to the clearance plan of the Kingyusi. Now, the Li family completely controlled the territory of tens of thousands of miles of sea area and seized more than a dozen of the most important spiritual stone veins, which really matched the foundation of the Jiandan family. It was also in this year that a little baby appeared in the Wanyu pond, with a lotus mark on his forehead, bright eyes, and babbling. Li Jinhan, a girl from the cousin Li Quanzu's family, also tested out the middle grade water spirit root and gold spirit root, and began to embark on the road of cultivation, practicing the basic skills of Jinshuju. The white-haired aunt came forward to plead in person, and Li Quanqing had no choice but to accept another registered disciple. He was very busy on weekdays, so naturally he would not teach any key disciples. so he threw them all to his eldest disciple Li Jingui. Li Jingui was naturally very fond of his extra junior sister, as he could finally satisfy his elder's addiction. There was no other way, as this little fat man was too young. Among all the foundation building cultivators of the Li family, he had the lowest seniority. He only dared to talk back to his father at ordinary times, and at other times, he was always the victim of bullying. According to the rules, he also handed over the Gengjin Sword Art to Li Jinhan, which was considered to be a continuation of the same lineage. Seeing this 6-year-old girl giggling with a serious face, standing on the embankment of the fish pond, holding a wooden sword and playing there, Li Jingui was so happy. He tried to tighten his round face and put on the majesty of a senior brother, but he couldn't suppress the corners of his mouth, which were almost raised to the sky. Li Quanqing sat cross-legged not far away, waving the bait, and the carp in front of him floated on the water, watching the sunlight shining gently. The scene was warm and natural. He suddenly felt that sometimes it seemed very good to raise a cute child. Time passed by bit by bit, spring went and autumn came, and the good times were fleeting. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed quietly like a passing cloud. Just as if in the blink of an eye, the cute little girl holding the wooden sword and swinging it with difficulty had grown into a graceful young girl. She carried the sword on her back and walked on the water. Her hair was tied into a neat high ponytail, and her eyebrows and eyes showed her innate determination. Especially the arrogance and sharpness on her body, which was exactly the same as Li Quanqing when he was young. Bah. In the fish pond, the blue waves were rippling, and the green jade carps floated out of the water, spitting out water arrows from their mouths, so dense that they almost blocked the entire sky. Li Jinhan's eyes were steady, her body was light and agile, like a smart bird flying over the water, with lotus flowers blooming at every step. The slender sword was wielded in her hand, her eyes were focused, and she did not miss any flaws. Every time she drew her sword, it was fierce, cutting through the air, cutting through the water waves, making a whirring sound, steady and calm. You have to know that among these jade carps, there are many in the middle stage of key refining. At this time, the water arrows blocked the sun, and the demonic aura was overflowing. Even the cultivators in the late stage of key refining had to treat it with caution. However, Li Jinhan was able to use her exquisite swordsmanship without relying on magic power, and successfully crossed the fish pond, and came to the embankment. Big brother, I wonder how I performed? She stood with a sword on her back, her words were crisp, and she still had a bit of the immaturity of a girl, but her face was indifferent, not as lively as it should be at this age. Not bad. In terms of swordsmanship, my junior sister is almost as good as me. Li Jinggui's round face was filled with amazement and regret. He whispered, she's just not as cute as she was when she was a child. Now she can hardly even smile. Li Jinhan pretended that he didn't hear it. He turned around and saluted respectfully to the man in green next to him. What do you think, uncle? Can you let your niece leave the family and go out for training? Chapter 328 Li Jinlian. On the dam, the breeze blew gently, causing ripples to spread. After losing their fun, the group of jade carps sank into the water again. Li Quanqing looked at the girl, stroking the hanhei bowl in his hand, and pondered for a moment. Are you sure you don't want to try the power of the elixir? It's just the bottleneck of the 7th level of key refining. A Tanghua pill can be successfully resolved. The power of the elixir is always an external object. My niece still wants to rely on herself. If this small bottleneck is difficult to break, how can you face the foundation building barrier in the chasm of Dan in the future? Li Jinhan's words were neither humble nor arrogant. His figure stood straight, and the courage of a sword cultivator bloomed from his bones. Since you have such an ambition, then let it go and say goodbye to your grandmother and comfort her. Li Quanqing finally agreed. He watched this little girl grow up. He had long noticed the desire to break free from the constraints and soar into the sky in the other party's heart, and was unwilling to stay in the family. The only thing to consider is that the aunt is too old and is worried about the safety of her granddaughter. After getting the permission from the elders, Li Jinhan's eyebrows suddenly rose with joy. After nodding and agreeing, he walked towards the direction of his own cave. Wow, sister. You were so handsome just now. As soon as the girl walked out of the fish pond, a 10-year-old boy jumped out from behind the tree. He had a lotus pattern on his forehead, beautiful eyebrows, and a face full of admiration. His big black eyes were full of little stars. Li Jinhan hummed, with a neutral attitude, as if she was too lazy to pay attention. From a distance, it looked like a little tail was hanging behind him. This little follower ran out again, and the old patriarch didn't know how to take care of it. Li Jingui saw this scene, and couldn't help complaining. It was like a carefully cultivated water cabbage was pushed by a pig. This 10-year-old boy was the baby brought out from the Cheyenne ruins before, and he also broke the seal, and grew up in the blink of an eye. The old patriarch named him Li Jinlian, which means lotus protects the body, and thanked the immortal for using the lotus to complete his innate essence. Li Jinlian's talent is quite amazing. Perhaps it was because he ate too many natural treasures when he was a child. He has 2 top-grade spiritual roots of golden fire. His cultivation speed is so fast that it is not worse than that of Earth's spiritual roots. Li Quanqing didn't care much. This is the youth of youth. He is an old man who is about to celebrate his 100th birthday, so he won't get involved. He touched the hanhei bowl in his hand and looked over. He saw that the sky above Yulong Island was covered with dark clouds, and lightning snakes were wandering all over the sky. The lightning was dazzling and amazing. A vigorous demonic aura bloomed, dark clouds rolled, and there was a terrifying roar of wind and thunder, as if venting the anger in his heart. That was the guy Fenglui Python King, who had been trapped in the bottleneck of the golden elixir for 10 years. Even if he refined the demon elixir of the golden crown Thunderpeng, he still couldn't break through. In recent days, his mood has become more and more manic. Maybe I should take this guy out to relax. Li Quanqing was not very surprised. He personally experienced the difficulty of Jinden. Therefore, he did not put too much pressure on his own spirit beasts and let nature take its course. He only needed to prepare many resources. However, there was Aoking in front and Long Yandao in the back. His former friends broke through successfully one after another, and each of them was a natural king of roles. The Wind and Thunder Python couldn't hold on any longer. The psychological pressure was too great. Even the Queen of Thunder Horned Python was too lazy to favor her now, and her mind was full of breaking through to the 3rd level Demon King. Under this mentality, even if the giant and spirit object Kangpan Lei Qi was given to it, the probability of breaking through was still slim. Li Quanqing stroked his chin, thinking of the conversation with the giant and cultivator of the 8 desolate Lei family when discussing the Dao of Jinden before. Before this kind of thunder attribute demon beast breaks through to a great realm, it can often find some naturally bred thunderstorms and throw them in to strike it. As long as the thunder does not kill it, it can make great progress and often burst out amazing potential. The Wind and Thunder Python is so anxious, it's just right for it to be struck by lightning. It can not only relieve the body and mind, but also experience the vastness of the power of heaven, and comprehend the true meaning of thunder. Now I stay in the hanhei bowl every day, trapped in a small space. If I'm not careful, I may even become depressed. Li Quanqing made a decision in his heart. Monsters yearn for freedom by nature. They are born and raised in nature. Long-term captivity in the cave is not conducive to the development of their character. It just so happens that my niece Li Jinhan wants to go out for training, and I personally protect her for her safety. If Li Jingui next to him knew what his master was thinking, he would probably cry out. Compared with his little sister, he, the eldest brother, is like a wild one. From childhood to adulthood, he has hardly experienced such love from his master. He often throws him a jade slip, gives him a few pointers, and then everything is fine. Although he was reluctant to let his elders follow him, his aunt spoke, and Li Jinhan finally agreed to act with his uncle. Li Quanqing didn't think of intervening too much. Young people always have their own way to go. Unless there is a life and death crisis, he will not take action easily. When the day of departure came, in addition to Li Jinhan, who appeared at the fish pond in a white Taoist robe, and with sharp eyebrows and eyes, there was actually a little follower behind him. "Why are you here too?" Li Quanqing frowned and looked at the half-grown boy, whose face was still childish. The junior just broke through the 6th level of key refining. "Grandpa said that he wanted me to follow you, the clan leader, to expand your horizons." Li Jinlian saluted like a little monkey, only daring to look at him secretly with his eyes. Li Quanqing frowned for a moment, and finally nodded in agreement. He released the Wind and Thunder Python. This trip was naturally led by this guy. Several giant monsters were too ostentatious, and it was not appropriate to use them to hurry on the road. The two little guys climbed onto the back of the monster python and screamed in pain. They only felt electric currents running through their flesh and blood, numb and tingling with a slight tingling sensation. Li Quanqing looked calm. This was a test. How could anyone ride a demon beast that had reached the state of great perfection in foundation building? In the end, the two boys and girls endured it silently, using their own magic power to dissolve the lightning. Instead, they found that it could promote the circulation of ki and blood and strengthen the body. Hiss. After coming out of the bowl of the vast sea for the first time in a long time, the wind and thunder python also felt quite comfortable. It was originally a demon beast that grew in the wild and was tamed later, but it was different from the spirit beasts that were raised from childhood. With a hiss, the wind and thunder python rushed straight out of the Qingyu cave heaven. The blue sea came into view, boundless and vast. Where do you want to go? Li Quanqing turned around. He could go anywhere, just to find the thunderstorm on the sea. Li Jinhan looked at the magnificent sea, and was also a little confused for a while. She had never left the family, and didn't know the destination at this time. Why don't we go to Shuhua Sword Sect? Li Jinlian suddenly spoke in a low voice, with a somewhat lonely look on her face. I want to go and see where my father lives. Chapter 329, Meeting Yunta again. The East China Sea is vast and magnificent. A python with wind and thunder wings cuts through the sky, gallops between heaven and earth, and cuts through the waves. On the back of the python, wisps of electric light linger. Li Quanqing sits quietly, his robe fluttering in the wind. He has long been accustomed to rushing through the boundless sea. Behind him, two boys and girls are curiously looking around. They are all leaving their families for the first time. They have never seen such a vast world. Especially the little guy Li Jinlian, whose mind is not yet mature. Even if they see a whale coming to the surface of the sea to breathe, they will scream and dance with excitement. In comparison, Li Jinhan is much more stable, carrying a sword on his back, wearing white clothes, but his eyes are also much more lively, and his eyebrows are eager to move. The wind and thunder python cuts through the clouds and flies in the direction of the Shuhua Sea according to the instructions. After sailing through thousands of miles of sea, it finally successfully arrives at the destination. The sword sect has arrived. Li Quanqing lowered his eyes and looked at a familiar sword rising from the ground, steep and upright, piercing deep into the clouds, stirring up the wind and clouds. Ancient buildings are located between the islands and stand on the peaks. They are ancient and vicissitudes and should carry the weight and heritage of history. But looking at it again, it feels a bit bleak and defeated. The palaces are empty and there are very few monks. Even most of the palaces are vacant, overgrown with weeds, and the blue tiles are covered with dust. Even the formations with flashing spiritual light are not open to save the consumption of spiritual stones. After losing those dozens of spiritual stone veins, the finances of the Shuhua Sword Sect have long been tight, and it is difficult to support too many sect monks. In addition, the nearby Yanyu sect, Biwu sect and other giant sects, with the tacit consent of the Li family, blatantly came to Qingyu to recruit disciples, and occupied the original share of the sword sect. As a result, this 1000-year-old sect has become increasingly decadent and dilapidated, and it is old, and no longer has the spirit of the immortals who came to pay homage. Is this where my father lives? Li Jinlian was a little afraid of heights. He held the scales on the wings of the wind and thunder python, and stood up carefully, looking at the Shuhua Sword Island with complicated eyes. He didn't understand that this sect was so dilapidated, and couldn't be compared with his own Qingyu cave heaven. Why was his father always unwilling to come back to see him? Do you want to go in and take a look? Uncle Quanqing should not be in seclusion. Maybe we can meet him. Li Jinhan spoke softly, and the face that was always tense also revealed a hint of tenderness of a girl. Li Jinlian bit her mouth, but finally shook her head. Her little face was a little stubborn, and she rejected the proposal. Then let's go. Li Quanqing said the last sentence. Seeing that the little guy did not waver, he stopped talking immediately, mobilized the wind and thunder python, and turned around to leave. Sensing the boy's emotional loss, he deliberately slowed down the speed of the wind and thunder python, and did not rush as fast as before. Fortunately, Li Jinlian quickly adjusted herself, chirping, and began to call sister all the time, with a heartless and optimistic look. The sea breeze blew gently, scratching their faces, and making them itch. The two little ones discussed excitedly and finally reached an agreement to fly towards the direction of the mainland. In their eyes, compared with the cruelty and bloodiness of the monsters in the outer sea, the mysterious mainland is undoubtedly more attractive. In the eyes of the teenagers, the mainland is like a huge island that is endless and seems to have no end. It is really full of wonders. Li Quanqing naturally agreed readily. He was also very interested in the vast land in the distance. He had not seen it since he crossed over. The demon python controlled the wind and thunder and flew towards the western sea according to the will of its master. That was the direction of the mainland. Unexpectedly, before they completely flew out of the Qingyu Sea, the three saw another strange scene. A cloud island-like sky-covering warship slowly approached. What a big cloud. There are palaces built on it, and there are so many people. Li Jinlian opened her mouth wide, raised her little head, and exclaimed involuntarily, opening her eyes. If you don't have any experience, read more. This is the Yun family's free and easy boat. It travels between the East China Sea and the mainland for trade. It often takes many years to come back. Li Jinlian was much more knowledgeable. He easily recognized the origin of this warship, and his eyes were also full of curiosity. Go up and take a look, Li Quanqing suggested. This ship has traveled millions of miles, and it may know many dangerous places in the sea that are covered by thunderstorms all year round. Okay, I agree with both hands. Li Jinlian raised her arms excitedly, and her tone was light. Li Jinlian also nodded in agreement, wanting to board this cloud boat to find out. The wind and thunder python screamed and followed closely behind this free and easy cloud boat. They did not do business during the journey. Soon, the cloud boat stopped not far from a foundation building sect and slowly landed with a loud roar, opening the formation to do business in all directions. Li Quanqing and the other two floated down and walked into this cloud boat market, with the foundation building monsters accompanying them and the green jade-green robes on their bodies. They immediately attracted many respectful and prying eyes, and many shop owners were carefully looking at them. Fortunately, Li Quanqing had been in seclusion for a long time, and these key refining monks didn't recognize him at all, which saved a lot of trouble. You go and have fun, don't worry about me. Li Quanqing stretched out his hand and pointed, and the wind and thunder python immediately activated the size of the wishful magic, turning into the size of an ordinary giant python, closely following the two little ones to protect their safety. After throwing away these two little tails, Li Quanqing also felt much lighter and got into the crowd, experiencing this long-lost lively atmosphere. He didn't need to enter the store, and with a sweep of his spiritual sense, he could see through the treasures stored in it and look for small things that made him feel interesting. Unfortunately, in his eyes at this time, many of them were garbage. Walking through the streets, Li Quanqing finally came to the area where monsters were sold, and a wave of memories came to his mind. It was here that he got two big cats, the golden flame tiger and the stepping cloud snow leopard, and had many good memories. Needless to say, the golden flame tiger is his favorite tiger cub. The stepping cloud snow leopard has also been working hard in recent years and is working towards breaking through the shackles of foundation building under the training of the ice phoenix. Li Quanqing stepped into this street of monster beasts, but unfortunately he was still disappointed. 99% of them were key refining monster beasts. Even if a few of them had the potential of foundation building blood, they were hard to look at and did not have much training value. For him, only those who had a chance to break through the bottleneck of the golden elixir would really be interested. Otherwise, he might as well raise more golden patterned green jade carps, throw them into the dragon transforming pond for metamorphosis, and harvest green horned fish dragons, which would be more cost effective. Li Quanqing came with hope, but eventually left with disappointment. He walked into the largest intelligence building in the cloud boat without interest. My dear guest, do you want to know about the dangerous sea areas where thunderstorms often break out along the way? The steward in the building looked at the great monk in front of him cautiously, nodded and bowed. Yes, there are such sea areas, and there are quite a few. I will send you the detailed information now. Soon, jade slips were presented on the jade plate, neatly arranged, and the catalog was sorted out. It was exactly the information he wanted. The steward said respectfully, "My boss said that these information are given to the senior for free, just as a good relationship." Li Quanqing didn't care about these, so he threw out a few medium-grade spirit stones and began to browse these jade slips. The human territory of the East China Sea is millions of miles long and almost boundless. There are naturally many difficulties and obstacles, and natural barriers are frequent. Thunderstorms are one of the most common ones. Li Quanqing carefully stroked the jade slip and suddenly raised his eyebrows, seeing a piece of information that interested him. Chapter 330, Thunder Python's Tribulation. In the intelligence building, jade slips were arranged one after another and scattered on the jade plate, which seemed quite orderly. Li Quanqing stroked one of the jade slips with his palm and saw something that interested him. There was a little movement between his eyebrows. The jade slip recorded that about 800,000 miles away from the Qinghai Sea, in a desolate sea area, thunderstorms suddenly occurred frequently in recent months. This storm broke out suddenly, covering a full 3,000 miles of sea area, with rolling thunderclouds, crisscrossing all directions, and lasting for 2 months. Many cultivators speculated that there might be natural treasures in it, and some said that ancient relics had been unearthed, true and false, and disturbing. It attracted many cultivators to go and find out, but unfortunately there has been no result yet, which is a strange thing. Interesting, we can make this the last stop and go and find out. Li Quanqing made a decision. The 800,000 mile sea area is enough to take the two little guys to see the world and broaden their horizons. As for officially traveling to the mainland, he had no plans at this time. It was too far away, and his current cultivation was still not good enough. After collecting all the jade slips, Li Quanqing walked out of the intelligence building and successfully found the two little ones with the help of the positioning symbol left on Li Jinhan. At this time, the two of them were carrying large and small bags and bought a lot of things. They had never seen such a prosperous place and had a lot of fun. Li Quanqing did not stop them. Thinking of his own experience when he was young, he was also like this, so he let them go. When the two little guys had played enough and were tired, he took them away, crossed the sea, and truly left the scope of the Li family's rule. Li Quanqing took out the sea map jade slip and marked the sea areas with thunderstorm areas. They were all good places to sharpen the wind and thunder python. 10 days later, they crossed nearly 200,000 miles and finally arrived at the first dangerous sea area. The magnetic field here is abnormal, the location is remote, and violent thunderstorms often break out. They were very lucky. As soon as they arrived here, they encountered a storm with lightning and thunder, and dark clouds covering the sun. Before the wind and thunder python could react, it was thrown into the thunder cloud by Li Quanqing. Dazzling lightning flashed one after another, and the thunder was deafening. Thunder rolled, and one after another exploded, as if the sky was collapsing, and the earth was splitting, which made people's eardrums hurt. The air was filled with a pungent smell of electricity, which made people tremble with fear. The figure of the wind and thunder python was looming in the dark clouds, almost drowned by the lightning, and roared hoarsely, encouraging the demon spirit to fight hard. "Well, I seem to smell the aroma of barbecue." Li Jinlian sniffed and muttered softly, with crystal saliva flowing from the corners of her mouth. Then she was hit on the head by Li Jinhan, and she covered her head with grievance. This heavy rain lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, and the wind and thunder python was also struck by lightning for 3 days and 3 nights. Finally, it fell from the clouds with blood dripping, and the injury was deep enough to see the bone. Li Quanqing put the demon python into the hanhei bowl and rested well. Naturally, it could no longer be used as a mount at this time. "Let's go to the next sea area. You two can try to control the flying boat." Li Quanqing took out his storage bag and finally found a first level spiritual boat from a corner. It was amazing that he didn't throw away this kind of garbage and kept it in his storage bag until now. The two little ones have the 6th level of key refining, so it's no problem to control the flying boat. They are eager to try. They took turns to use their magic power to infuse the core of the spiritual boat and ride the wind and waves. They felt very novel and really had the sense of freedom of traveling the world with a sword. Li Quanqing didn't interfere too much and let the two young men and women use their fists and feet to cross the next hundreds of thousands of miles of sea. For a foundation building cultivator, this is a huge challenge, not to mention two teenagers. Along the way, they encountered many hardships, such as monster attacks, natural disasters, and even blind robbers who set traps and howled to kill them. Li Quanqing rarely took action, and it was all up to Li Jinhan and the other two to solve the problem themselves. With the trump cards left by their elders, they successfully achieved the purpose of training. Unless they met a guy who was still difficult to defeat, even after trying their best, it would be the turn of Li Quanqing, a giant and cultivator, to slap him to death. It took 2 months for everyone to pass through the 800,000-mile sea area in a flash. The wind and sun, the bumpy road, even the two little guys lost their initial joy and curiosity, felt a lot of fatigue, and their expressions were a little numb. During this journey, the Wind and Thunder Python experienced 7 consecutive baptisms of heavenly thunder, and completely stabilized its cultivation in the realm of great perfection of foundation building. The originally huge body completely shrunk a lot, becoming more and more solid, and the cultivation level was squeezed out of the original puffy. It really has a bit of the appearance of a giant and true seed. Finally, they arrived at the place recorded in the Jade Slip, the final destination. The spiritual boat where the radiant light followed the waves, which was much more advanced than the previous one. This was the spoils found by the two little ones. After destroying a robbery group, the 3 of them stepped on the boat plank, looking at the dark clouds rolling like ink not far away, rushing and rushing, covering the sky tightly. Lightning bolts split the clouds with a mighty force, colliding and rubbing against each other, illuminating the dark clouds one after another, as if the entire sky was crumbling in this storm. Sure enough, there are some strange things. Li Quanqing narrowed his eyes and smelled a strange smell from it. He carefully explored it but found nothing. This thundercloud appeared suddenly, with thunder roaring, and there was no lack of lightning that could seriously injure foundation building creatures, which lasted for several months without stopping. Therefore, it attracted many casual cultivators to come, and many families and sects in nearby seas also came to join in the fun. You can see cultivators shuttling in it, everywhere in the sky and underground, trying to explore the secrets of the birth of thunderclouds. Unfortunately, nothing was found, and there were even many unlucky people who were directly split into ashes by thunder, and their bodies were gone. You two stay close to me, don't run around, this place is dangerous. Li Quanqing used his magic power to protect the two little ones to prevent any accidents. This thundercloud covered an area of 3,000 miles. The golden elixir consciousness swept through it inch by inch, but in the end, it also found nothing. It was really strange. Li Quanqing shook his head, too lazy to investigate further. With his sleeves shaking, he threw the Wind and Thunder Python directly into the thundercloud on the sky. Boom. Thunder roared, lightning burst. The Wind and Thunder Python had already been struck by the thunder, and had muscle instincts. Its scales clanged, and it was bathed in thunder and lightning, and it was like a fish in water. The demon python opened its mouth, and swallowed the lightning in the sky. Even the thunder, that was enough to seriously injure the foundation building cultivator, was swallowed into its stomach. It's almost reached its limit. The mental outlook is refreshed. You can try to break through the bottleneck. Li Quanqing watched the Wind and Thunder Python wandering in the thundercloud for 7 days, still unscathed, and was immediately quite satisfied. Even with his eyes, he couldn't find any faults. The demonic energy all over his body was as solid as iron, and as smooth as a hole. The power of thunder tempered his flesh and blood, and there was no weakness. It's time. Li Quanqing summoned the demon python, and took out the Kangpan Li Qi in a flip of his hand. It was like a ball of blue lightning, shaped like a rock. The lightning flashed, and the ancient breath filled the air, representing the purest source of thunder between heaven and earth. The Wind and Thunder Python screamed, with joy and excitement on its face. It couldn't wait to bite the Li Qi in its mouth and refine it, and rushed into the sky to try to trigger the golden elixir thunder tribulation. It was also at the moment when the Kangpan Li Qi appeared that a silver white thunder suddenly trembled gently in the depths of the 3,000 miles of thunderclouds. As if it had its own life, consciousness slowly awakened, and a hazy thought came out. Delicious, hungry. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331, Extraterritorial Thunder Spirit. Above the sky, dark clouds rolled, lightning and thunder roared, and the wind and thunder python crisscrossed the clouds, calling for its own giant and thunder tribulation. It bit the Kangpan Liki in its mouth, as if it was holding a piece of blue stone, and strands of blue lightning bloomed, ancient and vast, and was refined into its flesh. The power of this heaven and earth thunder is very strong. It has reached the level of Giandan, and swallowing it in one breath will endanger life. Although many monsters look stupid, they are actually very sensitive, and will run away at the first time when facing danger. Rumble. Finally, when the momentum of the wind and thunder python was extremely strong, the demonic energy was surging like clouds, and it finally succeeded in attracting the thunder tribulation. A ray of lightning fell like a divine sword before the opening of the sky, with a mighty power and magnificent momentum, enough to destroy all obstacles. The wind and thunder demon python was not afraid, flapping a pair of wind and thunder wings, facing the difficulties, and directly crashing into the sky thunder. After several months of training in lightning strikes, it had long been accustomed to this feeling. It had no fear at all, but was eager to try. The thunderous sound was roaring in the ears, and the momentum was overwhelming. This millstone thick sky thunder was directly smashed by the demon python, turning into arcs jumping on the surface of its scales. At the same time, the Kangpan Liki in the mouth of the wind and thunder python was broken into a corner, and the refining speed was much faster. The blue lightning covered the flesh and blood. The body of the demon python was originally purple and blue. At this time, the color of the pair of wind and thunder wings became deeper, as if it had torn the sky into pieces, and scattered on the body, ancient and heavy. It should be stable. Li Quanqing looked up, and couldn't help feeling a little relieved. The secret of the 8 desolate Lei family, to cultivate thunder monsters, is really good. They should be thrown into thunderstorms more often, and let them survive on their own to stimulate the tenacious will of the monsters. When the wind and thunder python refines the thunder key, it can also transform this Kangpan divine thunder into its own magic, just like Li Kunlun's evil repelling golden thunder. He looked around, and the golden elixir monster's tribulation made a lot of noise, attracting the prying eyes of many cultivators, who thought they had found the legendary treasure. As for the nature of this group of casual cultivators, Li Quanqing would not let them disturb the breakthrough of the demon python, and directly released Aoking to expel all of them. But what no one noticed was that in the spreading of the calamity clouds, a silver white thunder, as if it had its own life, drilled towards the wind and thunder python. This thunder looked no different from those thunders, but the color was deeper and the silver light was shiny, like a python twisting. This was actually an extremely rare thunder that gave birth to its own will, born and raised, and can be called a thunder spirit. There are similar existences like this, such as gold spirits, fire spirits, water spirits, mountain spirits, stone spirits, etc. They are all natural treasures, which gradually develop spirituality over time. As for the strength of these spiritual creatures, it all depends on their own origin. The higher the level of natural treasures, the stronger they will be after they become spiritual. Unfortunately, since ancient times, the environment of heaven and earth has changed, the origin of the world has gradually weakened, and these natural and natural spiritual creatures have almost become extinct. I don't know why a thunder spirit was born here. Under the cover of thunder light, the silver white thunder spirit crossed the calamity cloud and successfully came to the body of the wind and thunder demon python. Because its origin is a thunder, and it is very good at covering its tracks, it did not show any abnormality. Even Li Quanqing did not notice the other party at this time, but focused more on the golden elixir thunder tribulation and those casual cultivators. Boom. The 7th thunder fell with a bang, and the wind and thunder python once again faced the challenge, like an iron-headed fool, with unyielding meaning in his pupils. Hiss. I want to form a pill. I want to catch up with those 2 scroll kings, and after I break through, I must pamper my beloved concubine every day. With roars in his heart, the wind and thunder python smashed the thunder again, and the thunder tore through the scales, revealing slightly hideous injuries. The wind and thunder python king didn't care. Compared with its huge body, these injuries were not fatal. At the same time, Kangpan's thunder energy was finally broken into pieces, leaving only the last pure source of power. In order to repair the injury, the wind and thunder python swallowed the thunder energy directly into its stomach and refined it, preparing to completely use this divine thunder to survive the disaster. Only the last two thunders were left, and with the help of spiritual objects, it had a great grasp, and could definitely break through this golden elixir. Hiss! Exclamation mark. It opened its mouth and hissed, making a hoarse roar, swallowing and spitting out the thunder energy in the sky, to restore its own consumption, and the surging demonic energy between its scales repaired its body. Taking advantage of this good opportunity, the thunder spirit twisted its body and hid in the lightning, drilling into the flesh of the demon python. It went straight to the Kangpan thunder key. Hiss! What is that? I seem to have a stomachache. After the thunder spirit drilled into the depths of the body, it no longer concealed itself, and a malice surged out. It was born and raised by nature, and it could devour those powerful divine thunders to enhance its origin, so it coveted the power of the Kangpan divine thunder. And for some reason, this thunder spirit had great malice towards living beings, and even wanted to devour the flesh and blood of the demon python in turn, draining all the thunder power. In just a moment, the wind and thunder python realized that another guy in its body was secretly stealing the power of the Kangpan divine thunder with bad intentions. At the same time, there was a destructive thunder that burst out from the depths of its flesh and blood, trying to destroy the demon python's internal organs and extinguish its life. Hiss! It's over. I've got a stomachache. Damn it, I'll fight you. I'll die with you. The wind and thunder python made a decision in an instant without any hesitation. It was originally a wild monster, with an arrogant and unyielding character, and full of demonic nature. At this time, the fierceness in its blood was aroused. It no longer thought about surviving, and died with the other party again. Hiss! Exclamation mark. With a roar, the wind and thunder python soared into the sky again, opened its bloody mouth, and swallowed the giant and tribulation thunder directly into its stomach. It used its own flesh and blood as a battlefield, turning it into a grave, to bury the other party completely. This is a real heavenly power tribulation thunder. After losing the protection of scales and armor, the most vulnerable internal organs are directly exposed. Although the thunder spirit was born from heaven and earth, the destructive aura of the giant and thunder tribulation is strong, and it is an existence that is enough to destroy the minds of all living beings. It is also afraid of it. What's more, this thunder spirit was not bred in this world, but sneaked in from the outside world, and is even more afraid of such heavenly power. Therefore, facing this kind of mutual destruction, Lei Ling hesitated for only a breath before his tail was shattered by the robbery thunder, and part of his essence escaped. The malice of this world towards it is even greater than imagined. Without hesitation, the outer domain Lei Ling turned around and ran, instantly abandoning the prey, and got out of the tail of the demon python and escaped. The wind and thunder python felt like it had a stomachache, and it used poison to fight poison, farted, and then instantly revived with full blood. The robbery thunder raged in the flesh and blood, and at the critical moment of life and death, the wind and thunder python was surprisingly calm. It directly detonated the last Kangpan Shenlei essence to protect the heart, brain and other vital parts, and then rushed straight to the 9th robbery thunder. It was also the last heavenly robbery. Boom! Exclamation mark. The thunder sound was deafening, and the lightning annihilated everything. The body of the wind and thunder python was completely submerged, and only bones and flesh could be seen exploding and blood dripping. But it seemed to be experiencing a nirvana rebirth. Its broken body mixed with the Kangpan divine thunder, the heaven and earth tribulation thunder, and the part of the essence left by the thunder spirit. A strange fusion occurred, changing from flesh and blood to the element of heaven and earth, embarking on a strange evolutionary path. Harvest a giant and early stage wind and thunder horned python, and reward a 4th level tribulation spirit treasure 5 thunder mirror umbrella. Right square bracket. Chapter 332 5 thunder mirror umbrella. The dark clouds rolled, the lightning flashed, the thunder tore the sky, and the 9th thunder fell with a bang, turning into the most dazzling light of the sky. At the critical moment of life and death, the wind and thunder python burst out the last courage, not afraid of life and death. completely detonated the Kangpan Lei Key, and took the initiative to crash into the thunder. Although it protected the most important organs such as the heart and brain, its body was still severely damaged and almost shattered. Unexpectedly, the tenacious will to survive in the blood of the monster, coupled with the broken origin of the thunder spirit, suddenly let the wind and thunder python embark on a new path of blood evolution. The flesh and blood mixed with the lightning, the bone marrow was entangled by lightning, the blood was bright red, stained with the dazzling lightning, and began to breed vitality again. The wind and thunder python broke through the calamity and successfully broke through the bottleneck of the golden elixir, and was promoted to the 3rd level monster. A purple-blue demon pill rose slowly, and the surface was covered with strange thunder-like patterns, and began an unprecedented blood evolution. Because the calamity cloud blocked the view, Li Quanqing did not see this scene. But with the help of the blood contract, the beast slave seal, etc., he still sensed the joy in the wind and thunder python's true spirit, as well as the growing vitality. Success. While he breathed a sigh of relief, his eyes became sharper, and his consciousness spread out like a spider web, sweeping across the sky and clouds. In the short time just now, the wind and thunder python had told him about what happened before through the connection between souls. A creature shaped like thunder attacked it. Master, avenge me. Li Quanqing had not expected the appearance of the thunder spirit before, but now he was serious, and his magic power blocked the void, and he easily found the location of the thunder spirit. This guy was really too conspicuous. Those unconscious thunders, attracted by the refining of the wind and thunder python, all flew towards the deepest part of the robbery cloud. Only this guy was frightened, and flew in the opposite direction, flashing with lightning all the way, at a very fast speed, standing out from the crowd. It is indeed the legendary Lei Ling, born from heaven and earth. How could one appear here? Although Li Quanqing was puzzled, his hands moved quickly, flexing and stretching his fingers, and directly flicked a black dragon scale out. Roar! Exclamation mark. With the loud dragon roar, the dragon scale quickly changed in the air, and finally turned into a demon dragon circling, cutting through the sky, and heading straight for Lei Ling. This was exactly the demon dragon spear that Li Quanqing had obtained before. Even among the Yuanying spiritual treasures in Huangquan sect, it was a fine product with full spirituality. The demon dragon waved its claws, tearing the sky apart, and the demonic energy was surging, turning into a heavy afterimage, instantly crossing dozens of miles of space, with an amazing speed. It opened its black body, the scales rubbed against each other, winding and entwining, and instantly turned into a cage, trapping Lei Ling in it, and binding him with demonic energy. Crackling. Unexpectedly, in the next second, this silver-white thunder exploded directly, turning into arcs thinner than hair, and drilled directly out from between the scales. Groan! Exclamation mark. The dragon halberd spirit suddenly roared unwillingly, and its body was flexible. It grabbed the lightning again, and the demonic energy blocked the 4 directions. Unfortunately, it was still useless. The lightning spirit gathered and dispersed unpredictably, turning into electric arcs. Although it failed to trap them, it also delayed them for enough time. Stop. Li Quanqing took out the ice mysterious frozen sky mirror, and held it in his hand. The mirror surface shone, and a ray of ice blue mysterious light was directly emitted. The extremely cold breath enveloped the 4 directions. No matter what kind of creature it is, facing this extremely cold magic weapon, it will cause the effect of freezing and delaying. Even this kind of elemental creature born and raised by nature is no exception. The cold light shone, like a round of ice blue bright moon rising, directly enveloping the arcs that the lightning spirit turned into, and the extremely cold field bloomed, and frost was filled in the air. The cold air entered the body, and the lightning spirit was completely panicked. He realized that his body was frozen and stiff, and even his thinking consciousness was becoming dull. The arcs that scattered in all directions seemed to be experiencing slow motion. It finally felt an unprecedented fear at this time, and wanted to abandon everything and escape quickly. But it was too late. Li Quanqing came here directly with the Dangshan treasure mirror in his hand, and imprisoned all the silver white electric light on the mirror surface, freezing it with cold air. Crackling. The ice layer turned into a cage, and the runes shone, like a series of tiny chains interweaving and extending into the depths of the treasure mirror. These arcs wandered around, making thunderous roars, and finally gathered together unwillingly, turning into a silver-white ball of thunder, which was quite strange. Patriarch, what kind of creature is this? Beside him, Li Jinlian finally caught up with the magic weapon, with curiosity in her big eyes. If I'm not mistaken, this should be a thunder spirit that has only been recorded in ancient books. It is a legendary creature, not a flesh and blood body. Li Quanqing held the spirit mirror in his palm, and motioned to the two little guys, to watch it to increase their knowledge. Wow, so magical. Li Jinlian made an exaggerated expression, and stretched out her fingers, trying to touch the ice ball. She was both timid and playful. Crack. As if sensing the approach of a living being, the silver ball transformed by the thunder spirit exploded again, blasting a dazzling electric light, but still failed to break through the seal of the ice mysterious frozen sky mirror. In the end, this guy seemed to accept his fate, and never moved again. He turned into a bull like Mercury, and the silver light flowed slowly. Li Jinlian was also very curious, but she was much more stable. She just watched with her eyes, and did not make any extra movements. Hiss. Between the clouds, the blue lightning burst out, accompanied by an excited hissing sound, and the wind and thunder python suddenly flew out of it, stretching its body wantonly. From the appearance, it has not changed much. It is still a purple-blue demon python flapping its wind and thunder wings, majestic and ferocious, with a broad python head, which actually gives people a sense of sacredness. But if you observe it with your spiritual sense, you can sense that in the flesh and blood of the demon python, there are flashes of lightning, which are closely connected with the meridians, as if they can no longer be distinguished from each other. Boom. The wind and thunder python was flying in the sky, and suddenly the scales on its body burst into thunder, and its huge body disappeared, turning into a blue lightning. This ray of blue divine thunder cut through the clouds, rushing like lightning, and directly passed through the layers of space, almost teleporting to arrive in front of several people. Then the lightning expanded and exploded, turning into the body of the demon python again, flapping its wings excitedly, and a pair of pupils showed a lot of excitement. Thunder escape magic. There is no doubt that this is the magic that the wind and thunder python comprehended after breaking through the golden elixir. The power is no less than the golden elixir magic of the human race. Sensing the joy and happiness of this guy, Li Quanqing couldn't help but smile and looked at the white light ball flashing above the head of the python monster. 5 Thunder Mirror Umbrella, a 4th level nascent soul spiritual treasure that can absorb the power of heavenly thunder, store it in the treasure umbrella, and release it in an instant, creating a powerful force similar to a thunderstorm. This weapon is also a rare spiritual treasure for overcoming tribulations. Standing under the mirror umbrella, it can block the power of heavenly thunder and help nascent soul cultivators overcome the thunder tribulation of life and death. Right square bracket. Chapter 333 Goodbye Quanqing. Li Quanqing took off the ball of light from the forehead of the wind and thunder python and was surprised and delighted. He did not expect to get such a satisfactory 4th level spiritual treasure. He had never heard of this kind of magic weapon that could help cultivators to overcome the tribulation before, which showed its preciousness. Its value alone was enough to rival a spiritual object for forming an infant. Among the 3 levels of the nascent soul, the heavenly thunder tribulation was not as strange and unpredictable as the heart demon tribulation, but it was equally terrifying, and many cultivators fell in the thunder. He put the ball of light into the Qianqan bracelet, and then crushed it with his magic power. In the flashing light, a delicate and small mirror umbrella appeared in his sight. This treasure umbrella was colorful, corresponding to the power of the 5 element, and was covered with strangely shaped thunder patterns, forming dense runes, interwoven inside and outside the treasure umbrella, which was dazzling after opening. The thunder umbrella turned gently, and a breath as still as a mountain flowed out, as if it was a world of its own, isolating the inside and outside, and it could easily survive even the thunder tribulation. What a treasure! It is indeed a spiritual treasure for overcoming tribulations. It really makes me happy. Li Quanqing was very satisfied. He was already 99% sure about breaking the pill and becoming an infant. He practiced the Shiandao method. His own golden pill power was at a very high level. It was tainted with the characteristics of Cheyenne, i.e. true water, which was vast and boundless. He could definitely polish the golden pill to perfection. Facing the thunder tribulation, he had the help of the mirror umbrella. With this spiritual treasure for overcoming tribulations, plus his own powerful cultivation, he was safe and sound. As for the inner demons, he not only had a reincarnation bead that had not been used, but he could go through hundreds of reincarnations and sharpen an immortal heart of Tao. He could also use the power of the Holy Infant Pill to protect the true spirit with holy light and the difficulty of the inner demons. With the help of this pill that took away the fortune of heaven and earth, he could break through smoothly. Now that the 3 levels are fully prepared, we will only wait for the cultivation to be perfected, and then we will truly try to break through the realm in one go. Looking back, the boat has already passed through thousands of mountains. Li Quanqing's heart was surging, and the magic power around him was a little unstable. His robes fluttered, and he wished he could try to break through the elixir and become an infant right now. Of course, this was just his momentary excitement. Now that many preparations have not been completed, he readjusted them in a few breaths and restored his former calmness. "Uncle, how are you going to deal with this thunder spirit?" Li Jinlian spoke quietly, looking at the imprisoned silver-white thunder spirit, and a trace of curiosity rose in his heart. Li Quanqing was about to explain, but suddenly his eyebrows raised, and he noticed 2 powerful auras approaching. All of them were giant and cultivators. "I didn't expect that there were 2 fellows here. They must have been attracted by the movement of the wind and thunder python's tribulation. I don't know if they are enemies or friends." Li Quanqing waved his sleeves and directly put the magic dragon halberd into the Qiankan bracelet. This thing was full of demonic energy and was not suitable for showing in front of people. At the same time, he put the thunder spirit into the Hanhei bowl. This thing also interfered greatly. Although it was difficult for people to see its origin, it was better to be careful. The wind was whistling, and 2 giant and monks came together. Their Taoist robes were white and embroidered with gold patterns. They were all familiar people. Dao Changqing, Dao Zhao Qian. Li Quanqing was stunned for a moment, recognized the 2, and took the initiative to smile and greet them. The people who appeared in front of him were all Changsheng Dao monks. One of them had been seen at the Jiandan discussion conference more than 10 years ago. His name was Zhao Qian. He was a Jiandan Daoan monk. He had told everyone the secrets of the nascent soul and had a wide range of knowledge. The other one was named Li Quanqing. When the 2 of the Li family explored the outer space and searched for stars to refine the Cheyenne Sao, they met this person by chance and took a ride. It was also from this Changqing monk that he learned a lot about the policies and things of the Changsheng Xian dynasty, which made people quite fond of him. So its fellow Daoist Quanqing from Qinghai. Li Quanqing also recognized him, with a sincere smile on his face and a kind attitude, making people feel like spring breeze. Zhao Qian's attitude seemed much colder, but he still remained polite, not arrogant, nor did he treat him differently, and chatted with him for a few words. What a powerful thunder attribute monster. No wonder it can cause such a huge commotion. It must have been going through a tribulation just now. The 2 looked around, as if they were looking for something, and finally locked their eyes on the wind and thunder python beside them, with an inexplicable look in their eyes. Li Quanqing responded with a few words, and didn't want to say too much, but he didn't expect the 2 people opposite to suddenly start to change the subject. Dao Quanqing, I wonder if your demon beast saw a lightning with self-awareness when it was undergoing the tribulation just now. In other words, it is a legendary thunder spirit. This creature is not from this world, but sneaked in from outside the domain, so it has a natural aversion to living beings. The 2 of us have been chasing this creature for more than a month, but unfortunately we have not been able to capture its trace. It is hiding in this 3,000 miles of thunderstorm, and is quite difficult to find. Li Quanqing didn't want to talk about the thunder spirit, but he didn't expect Li Quanqing's words to surprise him. He didn't expect that the thunder spirit actually came from the outside world. In this way, many things make sense. The world in this place has long been broken, and this kind of creature born and raised by nature should have been extinct long ago. It is indeed not normal for a thunder spirit to appear out of thin air like this. After pondering for a moment, he still chose to take out the thunder spirit and show it in front of the 2. According to Li Quanqing's original plan, he wanted to raise this thunder spirit and perhaps harvest a new light ball. Even if the thunder spirit is unyielding in the end, or if this kind of creature is greatly affected by its talent and its strength progresses slowly, it can still be used to refine its origin and enhance the strength and qualifications of the wind and thunder python. It can even be tried to be refined into a pill, which can also have unexpected effects. But at this time, hearing that this thunder spirit came from another world, was targeted by the heavenly Dao, and was particularly hostile to cultivators, it immediately felt like a hot potato. It's actually a Yuanyingling Dao. Looking at the thunder spirit imprisoned in the ice ball, Li Quanqing and the others looked at each other, and were all a little surprised. Unexpectedly, this ordinary cultivator in front of them actually hid such a trump card. They took out a white jade box with a seal spiritual pattern engraved on the surface, carefully transferred the thunder spirit and sealed it, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. They never thought that they would be busy for so long, and finally they would complete the task issued by the Immortal dynasty in this way. At the same time, after Li Quanqing talked with them, he also learned about the course of events. It turned out that when the Changsheng Dao conquered a world before, there was no trace of life in it, only extremely abundant heaven and earth vitality, so they directly packed up several of the earth veins and took them away. Who could have expected that this world was extremely strange and gave birth to many elemental spirits, which were hidden in the essence of the earth veins, and returned to this world with the fleet. Then, while the Changsheng Dao monks were practicing, they mixed in the spiritual energy and drilled into their bodies, devouring their flesh and blood, causing quite a stir, and finally many guys successfully escaped. This thunder spirit was one of them. Li Quanqing and his men were ordered to capture it and chased it all the way here. Looking at the Li family monk in front of him who gave him a lot of good feelings, Li Quanqing pondered for a moment and suddenly said, "Brother, our plan is still missing a water spirit root monk. I wonder what this fellow Quanqing thinks." Chapter 334 Yuanying Relics. Li Quanqing was immediately interested when he heard the words of the two immortal cultivators. He didn't know what was going on, but they invited an outsider like him. Although he was a little curious, he didn't take the initiative to speak, but waited for the two to continue with his eyes full of interest. "Brother Zhao, what do you think of this fellow Taoist Quanqing? Is he a suitable candidate?" Li Quanqing said, smiling at him with a very kind attitude. Zhao Kan pondered, looking at the cultivator in front of him who had met him once, and his heart was also lost in thought. This matter was too important. It was related to his nascent soul path, and it just happened that he needed 5 giant cultivators representing the 5 element of spiritual roots. Now it just happened that the last powerful cultivator with water spiritual roots was missing. Zhao Kan's original idea was to capture the thunder spirit and then go to the 4C sect to find his target. However, the relationship between the immortal path and the 4C sect was not very good. One dominated Zhongzhou, and the other aimed to dominate the East China Sea again, so there were some conflicts. Even if he went to the 4C sect, it would be difficult to find those powerful true disciples and invite them to come out. The man in front of him is in the middle stage of the golden core. Although his cultivation is a little low, he is in charge of the nascent soul spirit treasure and has several third-level monsters as battle pets. In the end, Zhao Kan made a decision in his heart and made his own judgment. Even in the Huishan sect, a golden core cultivator with a 4th level spiritual treasure is a rare existence. He is the kind of person who is talented and is trained by the sect's top leaders. After thinking about the wording, Zhao Kan slowly said, "To be honest with you, fellow Daoist Quanqing, I invited a few friends this time to explore an ancient nascent soul sect ruins together." Next copy. Li Quanqing raised his eyebrows. When he heard the 4-word sect ruins, his original strong interest was extinguished. Since he came to this world for nearly 100 years, since he traveled through time, he has been staying at home to raise fish and practice cultivation. He really stays away from this kind of adventure. Naturally, he has a sense of distrust. But out of politeness, he took over the topic and asked, "I'm afraid this relic is not ordinary, since it can attract so much attention from 2 Taoist friends from the Changsheng Immortal dynasty. This nascent soul sect's ruins are called the 5 Element sect. In a certain period in ancient times, the 5 Element sect was also very famous. Several generations of nascent soul cultivators came out one after another, and it was at its peak in the East China Sea. However, due to the inheritance of the skills, it gradually declined, gradually lost the nascent soul to take charge, and finally was destroyed in the horrific beast tide that swept the entire immortal cultivation world that year. Zhao Kan spoke slowly and sincerely, without thinking of hiding anything. Li Quanqing seemed to see Li Quanqing's worries, and continued to explain. In recent years, the Immortal dynasty has re-excavated the ruins of the Five Elements sect. It has been determined that there is no great danger in it, so it is used as a trial treasure land. Senior brother Zhao Kan was already valued by several Yuanying cultivators, and he used his own connections to grab the task of exploring the ruins this time, in order to seek his own path to the Great Dao. After listening to this, Li Quanqing couldn't help but feel a little emotional. As expected of a Huashan sect, it was really generous and directly gave Yuanying ruins as a welfare, and gave it to its disciples as a task. Thinking about it this way, the danger should not be great, at least there will be no life and death crisis, and his trump card is enough to retreat unscathed. Of course, what made Li Quanqing's mind waver the most was the name of this ancient sect. Since it is named after the 5 element, I guess this Yuanying sect should be particularly good at the 5 element Great Dao. Li Quanqing looked at the two of them, stroking the hanhei bowl in his hand, but he thought of the monster wooden peacock raised in it. This peacock demon has a rare blood of the 5 element of the peacock spirit, and has already broken through the late stage of foundation building. In recent years, he has practiced hard, and has excellent talent. He is about to face the golden elixir barrier. It's time to consider preparing for it. Fellow Daoist Quanqing is right. All the cultivators of this sect practice the power of the 5 element of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. They are known to break through all laws, be invincible, and invincible at the same level. The founder of the 5 element sect was an extremely rare 5 element spirit body. He practiced with 5 major spiritual roots, and had extremely vast magic power. If the environment for cultivating immortals had not changed at that time and the origin of heaven and earth had not been weakened, this famous 5 element ancestor would definitely be able to break through the realm of transformation. Unfortunately, when the ancient times passed, and the world was fragmented, even the 5 element spirit body became extremely rare, making it difficult for the 5 spirits sutra he created to spread, and the entire sect also went into decline. Li Quanqing and the other two talked one after another, directly explaining the ins and outs of the 5 elements sect. This completely dispelled the last bit of worry in Li Quanqing's heart. But, since the two Taoist friends sincerely invite me, I will go with you to see this legendary nascent soul ruins. Li Quanqing smiled and looked at the ice phoenix war puppet in the hanhei bowl. He accepted their invitation, and was willing to go together. Seeing this, Zhao Kan felt relieved. The path to the nascent soul was in sight. The smile on his face became more intense and his attitude became much kinder. You two little guys, are you going to go with me to gain experience and gain some experience, or return to the family safely? Li Quanqing turned his head and looked at the two descendants of Li Jinlian's family and asked aloud. The 800,000-mile sea area was not too far for him. If he used all his strength to fly, it would only take more than half a month to go back and forth to the Qingyu Sea and send them back to the family. Li Jinhan and the others naturally refused to go back. They said they would go together to see how majestic the legendary ancient nascent soul sect was. Li Quanqing once held the Xianyang Burning World talisman, carried a Yuanying war puppet with him, and even killed a 4th level monster with his own hands. He no longer feared Yuanying creatures. At this time, he did not refuse, but just opened the hanhei bowl and directly put the two boys and girls into it, and he was ready. I wonder when we will set off, Li Quanqing said. Since he had made a decision, he would not go back on his word. Dao is really a man of character. We can set off immediately. At the same time, call the other two Dao to come, and we can make all preparations. Li Quanqing and Zhao Kan looked at each other and were very satisfied with this. Finally, they gathered 5 Gengjin monks. As for the matter of Leiling, there was no need to rush to hand it over to the Changsheng Immortal dynasty. Now that it has been sealed, it can be put aside for the time being. They took out a building ship the size of a date, and then shot out a Gengjin magic power, which quickly expanded, and finally turned into a silver grey oval metal warship. Li Quanqing saw something else. This warship was really full of technology. There were not too many patterns and formations on the surface, which was very different from the customs of the East China Sea's Yuxin world. But the cold and powerful metal texture made people feel particularly at ease. Zhao Qian saw a flash of surprise in the eyes of this Taoist friend, and was immediately quite satisfied. He deliberately took out this Qian Shou, which was recently developed by the Xiangang department of the Immortal dynasty, to deliberately show his own strength and dispel his last doubts. Dao Li Quanqing, please follow me inside to take a look. Zhao Qian waved his hand, and with a flash of blue light, the metal hatch silently opened to both sides, revealing the entrance passage. Li Quanqing flew into it, and after a short passage, he found that there was a different world inside, and it actually applied some of the zoomy space. The interior scene of an antique cabin appeared in front of him. The furniture made of spiritual wood was elegant. The brass beast furnace was breathing white smoke, and a smell of sandalwood filled the nose, especially those hanging landscape ink paintings, combined with the silver grey metal walls, have an indescribable sense of weirdness. It is like a perfect combination of science fiction and ancient style. Chapter 335 5 Elements Sect. The three of them stepped into the shuttle together. With a slight hiss, the silver grey hatch slowly closed. The surrounding metal walls were filled with blue light, and finally turned transparent, revealing the outside world. It can be seen that the entire shuttle has begun to practice at a very fast speed, breaking through the clouds at an astonishing speed, and the East China Sea under its feet is retreating to the rear at a very fast speed. The speed of escape alone is no less than that of an ordinary Yuanian great monk, and it can be said to be coming from Mount Zumi. But the interior of the entire shuttle is still stable and quiet, without any vibration or abnormal sound, which is particularly surprising. Li Quanqing sat cross-legged on the Taoist cushion, and the incense burner in front of him was curling with green smoke, cast in the shape of a lucky beast, with its mouth wide open, full of ancient charm. Pearls were hung high on the surrounding walls, and ancient scrolls were hung. It depicted the scenes of cultivators flying swords in the sky, fighting demons, asking about mountains and seas, and picking stars with one hand. It was vivid, as if the magnificent scroll of cultivation was slowly unfolding in front of him. In the corner, there is a huge bookshelf filled with various ancient books and jade slips, exuding a faint scent of ink. These ordinary scenes of cultivators' caves form a sharp contrast with the high-tech metal walls around them. Especially from the perspective of Li Quanqing, a time traveler, he can sense a clear sense of tearing, but Zhao Qian and the others are used to it. The refining methods of the Changsheng Immortal dynasty seem to be very different from those of our East China Sea cultivation world. Such strange warships are really unheard of. Li Quanqing thought for a moment and spoke carefully, fearing that a second time traveler would jump out from somewhere. I almost forgot that, in addition to being proficient in alchemy, fellow Daoist Quanqing has also made great achievements in refining equipment. Li Quanqing smiled slightly, as if he had explained it to many people, and was already familiar with it. About 300 years ago, the Immortal dynasty discovered a small world, which was also dominated by the human race, but the origin of the world was seriously insufficient, and the spiritual energy was thin and cut off. Logically speaking, the mortal forces in such a small world should be quite weak, and they would be vulnerable when facing the army of immortal cultivators. But on the contrary, the human race in this small world has embarked on another path. The whole family believes in a strange thing called science, and can actually burst out with powerful power with the body of a mortal. When the cultivators of our dynasty broke through this world, they also paid a lot of price, so they paid special attention to this scientific way, and made great efforts to study it. In recent years, they have finally combined it with the road of immortal cultivation, and developed many fantastic things. Li Quanqing was a little surprised when he heard him talk in detail. It is true that the world is so big that there are all kinds of wonders. The Sea of Chaos is boundless, and the number of worlds contained in it is countless. It is not surprising to find some worlds that are on the road of science and technology. It just happened to be discovered by Changsheng Dao, and it coincides with the concept of the Immortal dynasty. I believe that it will not take long for the reform wind of scientific cultivation of immortals, which is a great road to heaven, to sweep across the entire central region of Shenzhou. Li Quanqing asked a few more questions carefully and confirmed that this technological world is also round and square, not in the shape of a planet. While he breathed a sigh of relief, he felt a little lost. He didn't know if he could find his hometown in the rest of his life. Li Quanqing was melancholy for a moment, and then he let go of this homesickness. He has lived in the world of immortal cultivation for nearly 100 years, a long time, far longer than the short time in his previous life. Those memories are now much more blurred, and there is no need to indulge in them. Li Quanqing took out the Hanhei bowl and released Li Jinan and others to get in touch with this wave of scientific cultivation in advance. As for himself, by then he would have broken through the nascent soul realm and stood at the top of the human world, so he naturally wouldn't worry about these things, and even the Changsheng Immortal dynasty would take the initiative to win him over. According to Li Quanqing, relying on the power of pure technology, being able to kill a foundation building cultivator is already the limit. Only by combining with the immortal way can it burst out with infinite possibilities. The sky shuttle traveled between heaven and earth, and its speed was close to that of a great cultivator of the nascent soul. In just 2 days, it crossed 1,000,000 miles of sea and arrived at their destination. This is a rather desolate and barren sea area, uninhabited. Even monsters can't be seen, let alone immortal cultivators. Only the boundless sea water is surging, and from time to time there are schools of fish hunting by. The spiritual energy in the seawater is almost cut off, which can be called a mortal place. There are too many places like this in the entire East China Sea. Even if Li Quanqing didn't see any clues at the moment, he couldn't help but marvel at the fact that Changsheng Dao could actually dig out the remains of the 5-element sect in such a place, and he didn't know how he did it. The 2 Taoist friends have not arrived yet. Please do as you please, and don't leave too far. Zhao Qian opened the cabin door and let everyone in and out. He took out a guqin and stroked it with his fingers. The slightly high-pitched sound of the guqin revealed his restlessness. Li Quanqing took the 2 little ones and flew out, circling the sea for several times. Even the seabed was not spared, but in the end, he still found nothing and returned in disappointment. Li Quanqing saw his embarrassment and couldn't help but smile. He took out the spiritual tea and soaked it. A strong spring breeze came to his face, and the fragrance of tea was rich. The 2 of them tasted tea and discussed Taoism, with Li Quanqing as the main person, teaching Li Jinan and others how to discover these deeply hidden relics of the predecessors, how to distinguish the authenticity, and how to excavate the relics safely and reasonably. In the Changsheng Immortal dynasty, these are compulsory subjects that the immortal seedlings have been exposed to since childhood, and even 8-year-old children can talk about them clearly. But Li Quanqing was a homeboy and had never come into contact with such things. He firmly believed that, as long as his cultivation was strong enough, and he had enough trump cards, he could break all laws with one force. He was not embarrassed at this time. He pricked up his ears and listened carefully. He really felt a sense of novelty and gained a lot. The crowd waited for 5 days and finally waited for the arrival of the 2 streams of light that broke through the sky and came together. The close of the beast taming sect. Li Quanqing took a look and told the teenagers about the style of the Taoist robes of the beast taming sect and told them not to provoke them when they were out. Hey, it turned out to be this guy. The 2 escape lights came close to Cheyenne Suo, and with the rosy clouds dissipated, revealing the true faces of the 2 beast taming sect Chindan monks. Li Quanqing was slightly surprised and actually recognized one of the young men with a majestic appearance. He walked like a dragon and a tiger and was accompanied by a yellow dragon turtle monster. This man was called Fang Rulong, a disciple of Cheyenne Lang's engine. When the beast taming sect opened the Cheyenne Lang Tower, it was at this man's Chindan ceremony. As for the other golden-robed monk, although he was in human form, he had golden feathers growing on both sides of his cheeks, and a pair of golden wings stretched out from his back, as sharp as a heavenly sword, with an imposing aura. It's actually a half-demon body. Li Quanqing was surprised and saw the man's background, but his face remained calm. This half-demon in the Chindan realm reminded him of the Cheyenne Pengjin family, with whom he had many friendships. It was a powerful family within the beast control sect, and there was a 4th-level golden winged rock guarding it. The half-demon in front of him obviously had an unclear relationship with the golden winged rock, and should be a monk from the Cheyenne Pengjin family. The 2 Taoist friends are finally here. Now that the 5 elements are complete, my great way will be accomplished. Zhao Kan saw this scene and couldn't help laughing. He put the Guqin back into the storage artifact, and his eyebrows were full of joy. Li Quanqing is water, Zhao Kan is fire, and Li Quanqing is wood. With these two people, all 5 elements are complete, and the requirements for opening the 5 elements sect ruins have been met. Chapter 336 Yellow Sand Formation. The 5 giant and cultivators gathered together and talked to each other, getting to know each other and getting familiar with each other. Li Quanqing looked at the half-demon covered with golden feathers. This was the only guy he didn't know. After the introduction, he also knew his identity. He was indeed from the Xian Pengjin family, and his status was not low. His name was Jin Yu, and he was also a giant and aquan cultivator with strong strength. Now that all the Taoist friends have arrived, we can open the 5 element sect ruins and explore this ancient sect. Zhao Kan swept his eyes over everyone, suppressed the excitement in his heart, and said in a deep voice, according to what I said before, this sect is now protected by a 5 element formation, and 5 giant and cultivators are needed to act together. When the formation is broken, I will only take the Yuan Yingling Bao, 5 element ring, and the rest of the treasures will not be taken at all, and they will all be divided among the 4 Taoist friends. Li Quanqing listened to the other party's words and nodded gently, indicating that he had no objection to this distribution. This 4th level spiritual treasure, 5 element ring, was personally refined by the 5 element ancestor back then, and even consumed many ancient treasures. In terms of preciousness and power alone, it has reached the peak of the 4th level, and is not much different from the 5th level spiritual treasure. It has helped the disciples of the 5 element sect to survive many times when the sect was destroyed. Zhao Kan's goal is this thing. He wants to use the 5 element ring to abandon his physical body and entrust his true spirit to break through the nascent soul realm. Although the Changsheng Immortal dynasty is preparing to refine the Holy Infant Pill, it is too far away and not very realistic. It can be said that it is a pie that can be seen but not eaten. Now that another road to heaven is in front of him, Zhao Kan made his decision without much hesitation. Everyone rested for several days, meditated and exhaled, and restored their own state to the best, and then prepared to break into the ruins of the 5 elements sect. They drove the escape light and shuttled above the sea. The wind was whistling, and the sea water under their feet was dark blue and lonely, without vitality, and it was desolate. Li Quanqing looked curious. He had explored this sea area several times, but found nothing. He didn't know where the entrance to the ruins would be. In the end, everyone stopped at a reef sea area. There were many strange rocks here, like jagged teeth, protruding from the water surface. The sea water hit them and broke into white waves. After identifying them, Zhao Kan landed on a reef and directed others to land one by one, forming a circle. Li Quanqing stood on the reef. The sea water at his feet was endless. The tide rose and fell, giving him a sense of closeness, and he automatically absorbed the water essence around him. He looked around and found that the 5 stones under their feet seemed to form a lotus shape, blooming in the sea. In the world of cultivating immortals, lotus is undoubtedly a thing with many implications and profound meanings. Everyone, use your own magic power to outline the runes I gave you, operate the 5 element, and open the entrance to the ruins together. Zhao Kan spoke in a deep voice, and the flames around him were burning, outlining an ancient rune, which looked like a blooming skyfire, faintly resonating with the world. Li Quanqing did the same. He used the power of the Xian River to weave a water blue rune and imprint it on the reef under his feet. This place was indeed unusual. His giant power was blooming, but he was unable to break the rocks. It was indestructible. The 5 giant and monks attacked together, and their power drew runes, resonating with each other. Suddenly, the reefs were shining like a spider web extending into the sea. The 5 element runes appeared here, reflecting the sea water into colorful colors. The symbols and patterns converged and intertwined, and finally turned into a 5-colored lotus that slowly bloomed. Wow! Exclamation mark. The lotus bloomed, the color was colorful, and the water blue petals gently rotated, and finally stopped in front of Li Quanqing, crystal clear, and the glow was almost substantial. Everyone, I'll go ahead and see you in the depths of the ruins. Zhao Khan laughed, and in order to dispel everyone's doubts, he took the lead, with flames all over his body, walked into the red lotus petals, and disappeared. Li Quanqing was relieved to see that there was no danger or accident. He secretly clasped the magic dragon halberd in his sleeve, and stepped into the lotus. Crash! The cold water enveloped his whole body, and then completely merged into it, turning into a pool of water stains, remaining on the reef. In a moment, all the figures disappeared. Without the supply of golden elixir mana, the 5-element lotus slowly withered and shattered, and finally completely dissipated between heaven and earth, leaving no trace. The tide rose and fell, and the reef still stood, and this place returned to its original plainness. Ha! Exclamation mark. Li Quanqing walked out of the teleportation array and looked around. He immediately saw the endless yellow sand, the earth yellow storm covering the sky, and the endless desert. Earth overcomes water, so I was sent to this array area to annihilate my Cheyenne water with endless yellow sand. Li Quanqing looked up and saw that this was not an ordinary sandstorm. Those raging gale winds were as sharp as knives, carrying sand and stones flying all over the sky, forming dust storms, enough to seriously injure giant and masters. Li Quanqing walked on the desert, his feet touching the ground, and he could feel the powerful force surging deep in the earth. He did not rush to break the formation, but released the jade scale beast and the wood peacock, and took them to comprehend the Tower of the Earth here. Needless to say, the jade scale beast is a pure earth attribute monster with noble blood, which will be enough to break through the giant realm in the future. The wood peacock comprehended the power of fire when he was building his foundation. In the 5-element, fire produces earth. If you want to break through the giant, you also need to comprehend the origin of the earth. Yo. The jade scale beast ran in this golden desert, its 4 hooves frolicking, splashing large pieces of sand, and it liked this environment with abundant earth spirit energy. The wood peacock looked much more elegant, just strolling in this desert, with a yellowish glow on its 2 claws, absorbing the rich essence of the earth. Li Quanqing followed the 2 spirit beasts walking in the desert, observing the formation, and looking for weaknesses. This 5-element formation has existed for a very long time, but it is also powerful. It is the 5-element's X-protective formation. With his experience as a 3rd-level formation master, he carefully observed and barely found a few flaws. After all, it has been in disrepair for a long time. Endless years have passed, and the power of this formation has weakened a lot. It can barely exert the power of the 4th level. There is no cultivator to preside over the formation. No wonder Zhao Khan is confident that he can break the formation. Li Quanqing saw some clues, took out the Hanhei bowl, and held it in his hand, and was confident that he could break the formation. Yo. The jade scale beast walked along the sand dunes, and the jade horns on its forehead glowed with a hazy yellow light. It seemed to have found something good, and it kept shouting excitedly. Oh, are you saying that there is a treasure deep in the earth? Li Quanqing nodded lightly, not very interested. After all, the jade scale beast is only at the foundation building level, and the treasures it sees as precious may be of that quality. Let's go down and take a look. Li Quanqing finally made the decision. The Yulin beast nodded excitedly, emitting a yellow glow, wrapping them up, and using the earth escape technique to drill into the desert. Chapter 337 Yulin Breakthrough. The jade scale beast performed the earth escape technique, and the yellow clouds flowed and turned into a light shield, drilling into the depths of the earth. They went deep into the sand dunes, and the light around them suddenly dimmed, appearing pitch black, with only a faint demonic light shining. The jade scale beast dived all the way down, and it was unknown how many miles deep it went. There were still countless yellow sands around it, pressing the earth, and no blocky soil or rocks was seen. Li Quanqing did not interfere too much, but trusted the intuition of his own spirit beast. He was a little lost in the depths of the desert. Finally, an unusual scene finally appeared in front of him, with wisps of light blooming, and sounds like rushing rivers. Is there an underground river hidden in the deepest part of this endless desert? Li Quanqing was just surprised, and as the jade scaled beast approached there, he finally saw the specific scene clearly. It turned out to be a flowing river of yellow sand, boundless and almost endless, emitting a deep earthy yellow light, illuminating the dark underground world around it. This river, composed of yellow sand, keeps surging here, and contains a surging earth essence, which provides energy for the entire formation. Yo. The jade scale beast suddenly raised its hoof and roared impatiently, looking eagerly at a corner of the quicksand river. In the endless yellow sand, a small hill of earthy yellow rock was quietly sinking there, and the light flickered like a life. Over tens of thousands of years, these yellow sands have been gushing out, and the rich essence has gathered, and it has condensed into such a crystal of the earth. For creatures who practice earth attributes, this is undoubtedly a great tonic, the purest earth essence, precious and rare. The jade scale beast looked at the quicksand river in the distance, and couldn't help rubbing its owner with the jade horn on its forehead, and the corners of its mouth began to drool. Li Quanqing looked at it with amusement, and touched its head. He was not in a hurry, but looked at the yellow sand river in front of him. Obviously, this is the foundation of the 5-element yellow sand array. Just cut off the yellow sand, to break out of the array, and enter the real 5-element sect ruins. He looked at it for a few times, then found the right angle and shot out a stream of Cheyenne mana, which flew towards a piece of earth crystal, ready to pull it out. Crash. Endless yellow sand swept out, as if it had its own life, turning into a dark yellow angry python, roaring deep underground, defeating his mana. Obviously, even if this piece of earth crystal is located outside the corner, it is still protected by the power of the yellow sand river, and condensed into a whole. Seeing that its master had returned without success, the jade scale beast suddenly became a little impatient, emitting bursts of hissing sounds, and kicking its 4 topaz-like hooves. Little guy, be patient. Li Quanqing was not discouraged. After observing, silver light flashed between his palms, and he took out the void scissors and held them in his hands, like 2 slender silver dragons entangled. Whoosh! Exclamation mark. The next moment, the void scissors trembled slightly, turning into a silver lightning, shuttling through the depths of the earth, cutting through space, and heading straight for the earth sand river. As always, the yellow sands all over the sky gathered, emitting a dark yellow light, condensing into one, trying to block this attack. But the void scissors were so sharp that they cut the void and directly cut the yellow sand in half, breaking a big hole in the yellow glow. After breaking away from the restraint and protection of the sand river, the earth crystal rolled down directly and fell out of the yellow sand. The hard rock surface was covered with yellow smoke like clouds. Yo. Seeing this, the jade scale beast immediately roared with joy, and its big eyes flashed like obsidian. What was unexpected was that the earth crystal rolled 3 times in the sand, and suddenly there was a crackling sound. Then the whole giant rock cracked, revealing thick hands, feet and head, and turned into a yellowish rock giant, roaring silently. In terms of momentum alone, it is not weaker than a giant and cultivator, and it has some intelligence, similar to a combat puppet. I originally thought it was a treasure born and raised by nature, but it seems to be just a killing move to protect the formation. I was wrong. Li Quanqing's eyes were surprised. He also did not expect such a change. The reason is that this earth puppet has no breath of life, and there are no formation patterns on the surface. It looks motionless, just like a real stone. The battle puppet transformed from the earth crystal roared, and rushed towards them. The yellow sand swept behind it, like a giant python entangled with a kind of giant spirit. Li Quanqing clenched his palm, and suddenly a ferocious long halberd appeared, shaped like a roaring black dragon, covered with fine dragon scales, and golden patterns spread out. Cut. He poured his magic power into it, and used all his strength to drive the war halberd in his hand. Along with the roar of the devil dragon, he cut out a crescent-shaped halberd light, directly crushing the surrounding sand into powder. The magic dragon halberd slashed through, revealing its sharp edge, and directly cut the body of the earth puppet in half, with countless broken stones flying and crackling. But in the next moment, the yellow sand gathered together, as if repairing it, and directly repaired the body of the earth puppet completely, and roared up again, shaking the earth with its steps. It's similar to an immortal creature. Interesting. A puppet like this must have an energy core. Li Quanqing flicked his fingers, and the next moment the black halberd in his hand instantly jumped up, turning into a demon dragon with a monstrous demonic aura and roaring out. Yin. The magic dragon twisted and undulated, like a circling dragon, and directly wrapped the entire earth puppet, squeezing its body hard, and bursting out with amazing and terrifying power. Clang. Those black dragon scales kept opening and closing, and they were like fine saw teeth, quickly scratching the hard khaki rock, breaking it into pieces, and stone chips flew everywhere. Finally, the entire rock giant, which was as big as a small mountain, was shattered, leaving only a yellow chalcedony core, still trying to struggle. Clang! Exclamation mark. The demon dragon halberd spirit bent its claws and gently flicked on the chalcedony, making a pleasant sound. The demonic energy surged and directly wiped out the puppet runes engraved on it. Yin. The next moment, the demon dragon grabbed the earth chalcedony and flew again, respectfully handed it to its master, and turned it into a halberd, and stood it upright next to it. Li Quanqing touched the fine dragon scales on the surface of the halberd, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This Yuanying spiritual treasure is really useful and full of spirituality. It has already had some of the power of the spiritual treasure of the divine. Yo. The jade scale beast looked at this yellow chalcedony with desire in his eyes. He couldn't help but stick out his tongue and lick the palm of his master's hand to show his flattery. Li Quanqing laughed and was not stingy. He directly fed the chalcedony in his hand to the jade scale beast. The little beast roared excitedly, opened its mouth wide, and swallowed the topaz directly into its stomach with a groan. After swallowing the essence of the earth, it began to exude a strong demonic aura, absorbing the abundant earth essence around it. Its aura surged, and it attacked the bottleneck of the late stage of foundation building. Li Quanqing glanced at the proud wooden peacock next to him. This earth jade may also have a significant effect on it, and it can comprehend the operation of the 5 element. When the Jadelin beast successfully breaks through, it will continue to travel along this yellow sand river. Perhaps it will be able to gain something again, and try to break the formation. While he was thinking, he suddenly saw that the quicksand river seemed to sense his threat, and new changes occurred in it. As he wished, a piece of khaki-colored huge rock was wrapped in layers of sand sea and lifted up, blocking the surroundings, and blooming with fierce murderous intent. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338 Yellow Color Stone. The dark yellow quicksand river rushed, the turbid current rolled, and it roared noisily, like a yellow dragon wandering deep in the earth, releasing the essence of the 4 directions. After Li Quanqing killed this earth puppet, it seemed that he had touched the murderous intention of this formation, and immediately started a new change. The yellow sand swept in all directions, carrying rock-like earth crystals, all gathered together. The yellow mist flowed, and the powerful momentum blocked the world. Li Quanqing counted. There were a total of 7 earth puppets, which represented the combat power of 7 golden elixir. With such a strong alliance, even a golden elixir great perfection cultivator would find it difficult to get any benefits. It is worthy of being a 4th level formation. Is this the real power that has exploded? Li Quanqing's expression became serious, and he had to admit that he had underestimated this formation and the foundation of the 5 element sect before. With 8 golden elixir puppets, plus the help of the formation, they can already explode with combat power comparable to that of a golden infant great cultivator. In fact, this 5 element formation is mutually reinforcing and mutually restraining. If a cultivator breaks one of the formations, it will cause a chain reaction, causing the collapse and weakening of the other 4 formations. Zhao Qian invited them to break the formation, naturally with the confidence of winning, and would not joke about his own nascent soul path. He had already prepared the corresponding trump card, which could quickly break the formation, and help the other 4 people get out of trouble, and reach the depths of the ruins. Crack. 7 earth puppets appeared, and the sky was full of yellow light rising into the sky, as heavy as a mountain, filling this space, like being trapped in a quagmire, unable to move. Even the wooden peacock, who was always proud and calm, was a little panicked at this time, with feathers all over his body exploding and making anxious cries. Li Quanqing put the peacock monster into the Hanhei bowl, and faced with the simultaneous siege of 7 Jianden, he was still unhurried. He just reached out, and took out a treasure from the Hanhei bowl, and threw it directly into the center of the 7 earth puppets. Cry! Exclamation mark. With a cry, like piercing golden cracking rocks, the sky burst with cold air, like a snow-white giant python sweeping across, and the terrifying Zuanming true meaning burst out, instantly freezing thousands of miles. Yuanying Realm, Ice Phoenix Puppet. The Ice Phoenix stretched out its body, which was not very huge. Its ice blue feathers spread out and draped over its pale skeleton, surrounded by a cold and dead air, as if it was enough to freeze everything. In its exposed skull, the dark blue soul flame was beating, like a burning ice, escaping from its eye sockets. The cold and dead thoughts swept through the 7 giant puppets, without any emotional fluctuations, only the purest murderous intent. Buzz! Exclamation mark. The next moment, a snow-white light drilled out from the remains of the Ice Phoenix, and turned into an ice zoo and frozen sky mirror. Snowflake-like patterns on the mirror surface lit up, turning into an extremely cold storm sweeping out. This was the first time that Li Quanqing had seen a nascent soul creature fully activating a 4th order spiritual treasure. The power was truly earth-shattering, far beyond the imagination of a giant and cultivator. Crack, crack. The Ice Phoenix only flapped its wings lightly, and instantly a burst of cold air erupted. With it as a core, a thick layer of ice condensed. As the ice layer spread, a terrifying cold wave descended with a devastating force, and the mysterious cold air spread wantonly, like the sickle of death harvesting the vitality of all things. In just a moment, all 7 earth puppets exploded, turning into ice chips all over the sky, piercing the bone. The ice mysterious frozen sky mirror continued to exert its power, swallowing and spitting out frost. The hard ice froze the gravel, filling the yellow sand river, and spreading rapidly towards the distance. Cry! Exclamation mark. The Ice Phoenix puppet flapped its wings and flew, and wherever it passed, blizzards danced wildly, fluttering one after another. The yellow sand river exploded directly, and collapsed layer by layer in the cold wave. It was at this time that the entire yellow sand formation suddenly fell apart, unable to withstand the powerful fluctuations of the nascent soul level. The space cracked, the formation pattern faded, and a strong sense of repulsion was emitted. Li Quanqing was quick-witted, and grabbed the 7 earth jades, and put them away, then rode on the back of the Ice Phoenix puppet, and then flew out of this formation space, completely free from the invisible restraining force. Thick earth produces gold. After the yellow sand formation collapsed, the biggest impact was naturally the Gengjin formation next to it. The origin of the 5 element was shaken, and the originally perfect cycle had flaws. The power of the entire formation was reduced by a large margin in an instant. The Gengjin formation has weakened. In this space, Li Quanqing raised his head and looked at the Gengjin sword energy in the sky, crisscrossing in all directions, interweaving into a series of terrifying sword dragons roaring in the sky. This is the world of swords. Even the earth and hills under your feet are piled up with countless metal forged swords, like a tomb of swords, sharp and terrifying. The sword energy was so full that it even turned into golden raindrops all over the mountains and plains, falling from the sky and extinguishing all life. But at this moment, the power of this Gengjin formation was obviously declining. Many sword spirits transformed from Gengjin energy trembled slightly, and then all exploded. Such changes were naturally keenly perceived by Li Quanqing, who began to try to break out of the formation and display the immortality magic. It was the earth formation that was broken. Fellow Daoist Quanqing is really powerful. He broke out of the formation so quickly, even faster than senior brother Zhao. Li Quanqing took out a peach blossom. As the flowers bloomed, the peach petals flew, and it instantly condensed into a natural sword, surging with a strong breath of life. This is the Gengjin formation. Gold produces water. The next formation is where Zhao is. With the help of the vast sky and ocean, senior brother Zhao's fire spirit root is restrained. If Zhao breaks out of the formation first, the layers will collapse, and according to the order of the 5 element, a chain reaction will be triggered. The power of the Gengjin formation will not only be weakened by this much, but will almost collapse. Therefore, among the few people now, Li Quanqing is the only one who guessed that Li Quanqing had broken through the formation. Since fellow Daoist Quanqing has entered the ruins, I can't fall behind too much and let him be the best. Li Quanqing looked at the Gengjin sword energy in the sky, waved the peachwood sword in his hand, and the fragrance of flowers filled the air. In an instant, he cut down a jade-like pillar of light that reached the sky. The yellow sand method was broken, the space cracked, and the creatures in the formation were forced out. The ice phoenix puppet flapped its wings, drilled out of the space crack, and brought Li Quanqing to an ancient ruins that had been closed for a long time. Ha! Exclamation mark. The extremely rich essence rushed in his face, carrying the sense of history that had been sealed for years. Dust was flying in the air. This ruins finally welcomed a living creature for the first time. Li Quanqing exhaled a breath of turbid air, closed all the pores on his body, and cut off the gas exchange with the outside world. The 5 element sect ruins have been isolated from the world for hundreds of thousands of years. Who knows if such a long time will breed some poisonous miasma. Especially Li Quanqing saw more than a dozen corpses entangled together not far away, some of which were human cultivators and some were the remains of demons, which were hideous and terrifying. This kind of scene is everywhere in the ruins. The palace collapsed, the ground was covered with blood, and the evil spirit filled the sky. It is enough to see the cruelty of the war that year. The corpses of the human and demon races are everywhere, and the decayed magic tools are scattered around. Li Quanqing looked up and saw that at the end of the field of vision, a 5-colored mountain was towering and piercing the clouds, flowing with the 5 element of essence. At the top of this mountain, a palm-sized ring was quietly suspended, emitting endless dazzling light, as bright as the sun. Obviously, this is Zhao Khan's goal this time, the Yuan Yingling Bao, 5 element ring. Li Quanqing retracted his gaze and was not in a hurry to explore. Instead, he waited for others to break out of the formation, which was safer and more secure. He already had the Holy Infant Pill and the Reincarnation Pearl, so he was not very covetous of the treasures here. The only thing he was interested in was the 5 element scripture, which could help the wooden peacock break through the bottleneck of the golden elixir. Li Quanqing opened his palms, and 7 earth chalcedony exuded a soft glow, like flawless topaz, containing abundant earth essence. He threw a chalcedony to the wooden peacock, which was of great help to it, so that it could comprehend the great way of earth. At this moment, the jade scale beast finally broke through successfully, and set off a large tide of spiritual energy in the Hanhei bowl. Harvest a jade scale beast in the late stage of foundation building, and reward a 3rd level earth attribute spiritual object yellow color stone. Right square bracket. Chapter 339 5 element ring. In the vast sea bowl, the essences from all directions gathered and condensed into a yellowish-brown light shield, in which the figure of the jade scale beast could be vaguely seen. After swallowing a piece of earth jade, the surging demonic energy in this guy finally reached a certain limit. He successfully broke through the late stage of foundation building, and became a great demon. Harvest a late stage jade scale beast, and reward a 3rd level earth attribute spiritual object yellow color stone. Yellow color stone. It is rumored that there are saints in the fairy world who refine 5 color sky stones, repair the scars of the sky, eliminate the world destroying floods, and have immeasurable merits. The cause and effect are entangled, and illuminate the heavens. Almost every big world will breed 5 color stones. This yellow color stone is one of the 5 color stones bred in this world. It contains a trace of Kuntadeo rhyme, and can even capture the chaotic and distant artistic conception of the creation of the world. Li Quanqing touched the light bowl with his spiritual consciousness, and suddenly a large piece of text appeared, telling the origin of it. He also didn't expect that a small stone would be related to the ancient sacred existence in the fairy world. The 5-colored sky stone. Could it be the legend of the great goddess Nuwa, refining 5-colored stones to mend the sky? Cause and effect are entangled, reflecting the heavens. Is the blue planet where I originally lived also one of the heavens and myriad worlds? Li Quanqing couldn't figure it out, so he had to bury these thoughts in his heart, waiting for the day when his cultivation was strong enough to explore again. He crushed the ball of light, and suddenly a thumb-sized stone appeared, which looked like topaz, but the color was rough and deep, not as crystal clear as jade. But it was this kind of material that showed a sense of grandeur and simplicity. After precipitation, it interpreted the Tao rhyme of the earth, and was virtuous and immortal. He looked at the yellow-colored stone. It was obviously an excellent material for refining magic weapons, and it could also be left to the spirit beasts. The origin of the yellow colored stone can be refined for cultivation, and it can also be refined into a lifelong magic weapon to enhance the combat effectiveness of the spirit beasts. Previously, he helped Tao King successfully refine the Taiyan banner, which was his natal demon weapon. He used the spiritual banner to practice daily. This sense of achievement satisfied Li Quanqing for a while. Now he was looking forward to teaching a few more disciples to refine weapons. This was much more fun than refining weapons by himself. Li Quanqing put away the yellow-colored stone. Such a treasure, whether it was the wooden peacock or the jade unicorn beast, was very suitable. He couldn't make a decision for a while. At that time, he could only wait for them to make a decision on who would own it. Li Quanqing stroked the hanhei bowl and was pondering. The space behind him cracked again, and raging flames gushed out, revealing a phoenix firebird, stretching its neck and crying. Dao Ayao Zao Kan. Li Quanqing turned around and smiled slightly. The person who came was not unexpected to him. It was the most powerful senior brother Zao. Zao Kan was wrapped in the fire phoenix armor. Seeing that someone had broken through the formation before him, he was also a little stunned. Then he realized that he had made a mistake. Dao Ayao Quanqing is really a hidden talent. He was stunned for a moment, then smiled, still with his pride, and felt that he had met an excellent opponent. Dao Ayao Li will have a place in the future on the nascent Soul Avenue. Brother Zao is too flattering. I was just lucky, and took advantage of it. Li Quanqing chatted with him for a few words, and the space cracks behind him appeared again. A mighty figure strode out, walking like a dragon and a tiger, full of righteousness, followed by a yellow dragon turtle. It was Fang Rulong, a cultivator from the beast taming sect. The two Daoists have great magical powers. Fang Rulong's eyes swept between the two, with a little curiosity and exploration, wanting to know who was the first to break out of the formation. Li Quanqing then walked out of the 5-element formation, still with a handsome face and a smile between his eyebrows, making people feel like they were bathed in spring breeze, as if they saw an ancient tree growing tall. He had naturally guessed Li Quanqing's strength, but he did not make it public, just kept it in his heart, talking and laughing. The last person to come out was the half-demon with the blood of the golden winged rock. He had reached the great perfection of the golden core, and was the highest level except for Zao Kan. When he saw that he was the last person to break through the formation, his expression changed a little, and his mood was complicated, and he even had some self-doubt. Okay, everyone, since we have already broken through the formation, it is time to harvest. Be careful to explore the ruins, and don't let a few treasures create gaps. As before, Zao Kan gave orders again, and began to move towards the 5-colored mountain with a clear goal. The people walked through this ancient ruins, which had become a battlefield, with corpses and ashes everywhere. The ruins stood in the dead silence, and the defensive formation that once protected the 4 directions was now only left with twisted and charred lines, telling of the fierce fighting and confrontation in the past. As everyone walked by, the bones and scales left by the human and demon races all turned into ashes and dispersed, having long been worn away by the erosion of time. Only a few pieces of magic weapon fragments were left scattered around, dim and without light. The spirituality contained in them had long disappeared, leaving only cold debris. Li Quanqing and his group picked and chose like this, and occasionally they could come across quite good materials and put them in their pockets. After walking for most of the day, they could finally see the foot of the 5-colored giant peak. There was an ancient and sacred building built there, and it was even still shrouded in the spiritual light of the formation, bathing in the majestic essence flowing down from the 5-element mountain. This is the core area of the entire 5-element sect, where the most important treasures are stored. The 5-element sect was destroyed suddenly back then, and there must have been no time to move the treasure house. It has been stored here for countless years, waiting for future generations to open it. According to the previous agreement, I will only take the 5-element ring on this mountain, and the remaining treasures will be handled by the 4 of you. I wish all Taoist friends good luck. Zao Kan laughed. His eyes were fiery, staring at the 5-element ring at the peak, and strode directly onto this ancient peak. Li Quanqing looked at the 5-element mountain. In the Niwen Palace, the Taiyan giant along was circling, and the clear moonlight was shining in all directions, which was actually a warning. Obviously, this mountain is not as peaceful and safe as it looks. There are unknown dangers hidden in the depths. Cause and effect cycle. As long as I'm not greedy, danger will not find me. Li Quanqing retracted his gaze, took out a tortoise shell and cast a spiritual hexagram, successfully found a direction that was most fortunate for him, and turned away. The other three also acted separately according to their abilities, and began to look for their own goals. Everything was harmonious and there was no conflict. Li Quanqing shuttled through this palace. Due to the protection of the formation, many buildings were well preserved. Only one area was completely shattered and turned into ruins. Obviously, an amazing war had broken out, and the remaining power was tragic. Jinj. Li Quanqing followed his intuition, turned several corners, and finally stopped at a well-preserved building, and was immediately satisfied. Chapter 345 Spirit's Sutra. Li Quanqing looked at the sutra library in front of him. Like the most common buildings in the Five Elements sect, it was also colorful. The whole building was pentagonal in shape, with an open-air caisson in the middle. Unfortunately, it was covered by the formation, so it was difficult to see the scene clearly. Li Quanqing walked around the sutra library, observing the formations that were shining with spiritual light and flowing with powerful aura. Layers of formations intertwined in all directions, and the five-element runes flowed, covering the sky like a lotus formation that was about to bloom, ancient and fascinating. Li Quanqing saw some clues. This five-element sect seemed to be particularly fond of lotus, which had a high status in the sect. After so many years, time was enough to erase everything. Even this powerful formation was no exception. Li Quanqing looked at it with the eyes of a formation master, and easily found several small flaws, which appeared at the critical moment when the energy of the formation was flowing. For ordinary giant and cultivators, even if they found these flaws, they could only watch, and could do nothing. Firstly, these flaws disappeared too quickly. The array patterns were intertwined and covered, making them difficult to touch and fleeting. Secondly, to pry open these flaws, extremely powerful mana was needed to make a small bet for a big one, and cause the formation to collapse. Fortunately, Li Quanqing had many cards, and could always find a way to solve these problems. He took out the void scissors and held them in his hand. The silver white edge was almost completely integrated into the void space, almost invisible. The next moment, Li Quanqing seized a flaw that appeared when the five-element lotus array was alternating, and threw the spiritual treasure in his hand directly. The speed of the void scissors was so amazing that it turned directly into a silver white lightning, and Zumi arrived and forcibly inserted into the array pattern. Then the silver scissors opened and closed, making a click, directly erasing the runes one by one, turning them into nothingness and dissipating, creating a tiny crack in the strict array protection. Go. Li Quanqing then flicked his sleeves, and with a high-pitched dragon roar, a pitch-black demon dragon flew out gracefully, hovering in the crack, its body growing larger and larger. Snap, snap. The demon dragon halberd was indestructible. When it was refined, it consumed the dragon scale of a divine dragon. It can be said to be one of the most solid treasures in the world of immortal cultivation. At this time, the demon dragon halberd spirit kept roaring and waving its claws. With the help of the sharpness of the void shears, it forcibly opened a passage in the formation, and the scene inside the sutra pavilion could already be seen. Li Quanqing stepped through the layers of formation aura, and walked into the sutra pavilion. He carefully put away the two Yuanying spiritual treasures, and nourished them with his own chi and magic power. Without the interference of external objects, this lotus formation quickly repaired the gap. The Dao marks intertwined, the runes flew, and it was intact in an instant. Li Quanqing walked in the main hall of the Sutra Pavilion. This is a dark green building. The dusty ancient atmosphere came to his face, and the majesty was hard to describe. He looked around, and felt as if he had come to the kingdom of wood, with domes and pillars built of various spiritual woods everywhere. The wooden frames were filled with jade slips, and branches and vines intertwined, turning into the shape of a palm. Holding up these jade slips were Dharma skill, Yiwood skill, Kangwu true scripture, falling flowers technique, 10,000 trees together. Li Quanqing's consciousness swept through these jade slips, all of which were wood attributed skills and spiritual arts. Obviously, this was a wood treasure. The only regret was that even jade slips could not last forever. Many traces of the Tao had been erased over the years, leaving only an empty shell. The contents inside had also disappeared and could no longer be seen in the world. Such a vast accumulation of 5 element scriptures is enough to supplement the weak foundation of my Li family. This is the accumulation of tens of thousands of years of a Yuanying sect. I want to pack it up and take it away. Li Quanqing exhaled a breath of turbid air, but he was not anxious. Instead, he passed through the entire building and reached the deepest part of the Sutra Pavilion. An arch appeared in front of him, and even bright light shone in. Even the air became much fresher, with cool water vapor. Li Quanqing walked through the arch and entered an open-air courtyard. In the center, there were rippling water and a pentagonal pool. He looked around and found 5 sutra pavilions of different colors, each representing one of the 5 element. These pavilions are independent of each other, but connected to each other to form a whole, which coincides with the concept of the 5 element. The 5 sutra pavilions represent the inheritance of the 5 divine treasures of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Then what about the core inheritance of the Yuanying, the 5 spirits sutra? Li Quanqing's eyes swept around and finally stopped at the pool not far away. He already had the answer in his mind. As expected, this was a lotus pond, built with some colorful stones, engraved with lotus-shaped patterns and divine figures. 5 spirits scripture. In Li Quanqing's Niwen Palace, the Taiyin dragon hovered, releasing clear moonlight, illuminating the surging sea of consciousness, and entered a state of enlightenment. The bright moon of the Taiyin hung high in the sky, illuminating the palace, making the mind clear. The understanding greatly increased, and even the sixth sense in the dark was strengthened. With just one glance, Li Quanqing saw through the secret of this pool of water. Those carved lotus gods are the real inheritance of the nascent soul, recording the great way of the 5 element ancestors in the past, and perfectly fit the 5 element spirit body. It is most suitable for cultivators with balanced development of the 5 spiritual roots. However, such people are too rare. Although the human cultivators in this world have all the 5 element of spiritual roots, they are all biased and strong. For example, Li Quanqing has the strongest water spiritual root, reaching the level of upper grade spiritual roots, and the spiritual roots of the remaining attributes are pitifully weak. Obviously, he has no chance with this scripture. If you want to achieve something in practicing the 5 spirits scripture, at least all 5 spiritual roots must be at the level of middle grade spiritual roots. This also made it difficult for the 5 element sect to recruit disciples. As the environment of heaven and earth was broken, the qualifications of the human race's geniuses slowly declined. This famous Yuanying Sutra also declined, and it was difficult to show its former fame and strength. Li Quanqing retracted his gaze. He only saw that this scripture was hidden in the stone pool. If he wanted to really decipher it, it would take an extremely long time. The sect's scriptures are only worthy of being engraved on stones. So what kind of treasure is planted in this pool? Li Quanqing slowly approached and looked through his spiritual sense. He immediately saw the water waves and mist rising. The whole pool was clear and transparent, and even the silt on the surface showed colorful colors, but unfortunately there was nothing. Li Quanqing looked at the colorful silt. His expression was slightly moved, and he sensed some extremely powerful aura from it. That feeling was even a bit like the legendary 5 element golden pill. Swallowing a pill into the stomach can make the foundation building cultivator change his fate against the will of heaven and condense the golden pill. Some kind of divine object once melted or withered. Here, the remaining divine power nourished the mud and turned into an existence comparable to a spiritual object that had formed a pill. Li Quanqing exclaimed, and his spiritual sense swept through the mud inch by inch and finally made his own discovery. Chapter 341 5-Colored Lotus. In the ancient lotus pond, the water surface was shining brightly, and wisps of mist rose up, reflecting the colorful colors, as if it was a fairyland on earth. Li Quanqing's fingertips swallowed and exhaled magic power, turning into a gentle stream of water, turning over the silt, washing away the filth, and lifting out the divine object that had been buried for endless years. It was a fist-sized lotus seed. The bottom was pure white like jade, and the top was dyed into 5 colors. It looked pure and sacred, and was filled with a faint 5 element Tao rhyme. This was a real divine object. perhaps born at the beginning of the world, contaminated with some kind of rule power, and could be regarded as a tangible incarnation of the Tao. Now that the world of cultivation is broken, and the laws are defective, it is impossible to breed such a divine object. All of them are left over from ancient times. 5-colored treasure lotus. Li Quanqing didn't know this thing, but he still gave it a name according to his own understanding. After all, this thing is now in his hands. It belongs to him. No one can take it away, and he can call it whatever he wants. It is at least a 4th grade, top grade divine medicine of heaven and earth. The lotus seeds produced should be able to assist the foundation building cultivators in forming the elixir. If it is swallowed for a long time, it may also enhance the cultivator's qualifications and spiritual roots, and become more intimate with the spiritual energy between heaven and earth. Li Quanqing was full of amazement, and couldn't help but sigh that these ancient cultivators had really good food and extremely rich resources. Even a 5-element sect that was not surprisingly strong was still so rich, and had such a divine object of heaven and earth. At this time, he had some doubts that the 5-element golden elixir refined by the human cultivators was imitating the lotus seeds produced by this precious lotus. The only pity is that this precious lotus has long withered, reborn from nirvana, and turned into a new divine seed, and none of the lotus seeds from the past are left. The original vitality is seriously depleted, and the fortune is flawed. It seems that all the energy and vitality were taken away in an instant. Li Quanqing touched the colorful lotus seed, and after studying it, he frowned slightly, and came to this conclusion. This divine seed has been buried in the pool for hundreds of thousands of years, and has been constantly nourished by spiritual energy, but it still has not sprouted and grown again, and its original vitality is almost exhausted. Can he really make it sprout again? When monks deal with life and death enemies, they extract the vitality of magic weapons or spiritual medicines in an instant, draining the pond to catch all the fish. This is an extremely common method. When the monster beast tide swept across the East China Sea, how powerful and cruel were they, that they forced the 5-element sect monks to use such cruel means to fight the enemy. Li Quanqing put away the 5-colored treasure lotus and guessed the truth of what happened that year. He looked up and saw a ring with 5 key flowing at the top of the towering mountain through layers of formations. To fully activate this 4th level peak spiritual treasure, the huge consumption is enough to make the giant and monk despair. When the 5-element sect was destroyed, there was no Yuanying monk sitting in charge, so they could only squeeze out the energy of the 5-colored treasure lotus and use the 5-element ring to suppress the enemies. Li Quanqing retracted his gaze. In the past, the demons occupied the entire East China Sea, and even the Xi'an Road was destroyed. It was really a catastrophe for the human race. Next, it's the stage of packing up and taking away. He looked at the pool of water and the 5 sutra pavilions around it. He had already made plans. Destroying buildings and palaces everywhere, looting treasures, and being extremely vicious. Those are rubbish methods that only casual cultivators would use. When a real great cultivator explores the ruins, they will directly move everything away and scrape the ground 3 feet. This is in line with the thinking of the cultivators who want to change their fate against the will of heaven. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is still mine. Li Quanqing took out the Hanhei bowl and directly released all the giant and spirit beasts. King Gaiu Qiu, Void Butterfly, Dragon Flame Eagle, Zuanming Ice Phoenix, including himself. There are exactly 5 of them, each responsible for a sutra pavilion. Even this lotus pond was not spared. Get up. The 5 giant and creatures each occupied one side, and their magic power and demonic energy intertwined, turning into a huge hand that covered the sky and directly lifted up the entire sutra pavilion. With a rumbling sound, the ground shook, the soil cracked, and naturally there were larger A patterns emerging and interweaving, preventing them from continuing to destroy the sutra pavilion array. Li Quanqing was not afraid, and at the same time, took out 4 Yuanying Ling Bao and gave them to the monsters to activate, suppressing the heaven and earth and blocking the void. In the end, the 5-element sect's scripture collection was directly emptied by him and placed in the Hanhei bowl, leaving only a big pit in the original place. Without the energy supply of the lotus pond, the entire 5-element lotus array gradually became dim and finally exploded completely. This lotus array is not bad. Although the coverage area is a little smaller, it is a 4th level array after all. Take it all away. Li Quanqing was busy again, picking and choosing in the surrounding soil, and digging out all the array bases buried in the ground. These array bases include ancient swords, small flags carved from tree stumps, earth crystal cores, flame feathers, etc., all of which are 5 element, and there are many of them. If the 5-colored treasure lotus bloomed in the past, the power of this formation would be extremely strong, and he would not dare to be so presumptuous. Now that I have received such a divine object as a favor, there will naturally be causal entanglements. In the future, I will continue the incense inheritance for the 5-element sect and find a person with outstanding talent to practice the 5 spirits sutra. Li Quanqing stroked the Hanhei bowl and made a decision in his heart. This blessed land and the 4th level spiritual vein, he naturally can't think about it. It must be taken by the Changsheng Dao. He even thought about taking the initiative to pass on these scriptures and give a copy to the Changsheng Dao to build a good relationship. Listening to Li Quanqing's story, the cultivators of the Changsheng Immortal dynasty like these lost ancient books the most, and they have reached a level of madness. After all, the Qinghai Cave Heaven is only a 3rd level spiritual vein. When I break through the nascent soul realm, it will be a little bit inferior. I heard that the Changsheng Immortal dynasty can artificially upgrade the spiritual vein grade. A nascent soul inheritance in exchange for a 4th level spiritual vein. This deal is not a loss. Li Quanqing stroked his chin, already thinking about the upgrade of the family cave heaven. In fact, the Whale Emperor sect has the potential for the nascent soul, but the Battle of Destruction that year also suffered heavy losses. As a result, the spiritual veins of the entire cave heaven have been depleted a lot, and it can no longer withstand the extraction of the nascent soul cultivators. Li Quanqing gathered his mind and was about to explore the rest of the buildings when suddenly a loud rumbling sound came, resounding throughout the ruins of the 5-element sect. The 5-element mountain was shining brightly, shaking violently, and the rocks and clouds were collapsing, as if it was about to break into pieces. In the cracked mountain, in addition to the gushing out of the sky, there were also wisps of demonic clouds, with surging resentment and the sound of unwilling beasts. Sure enough, there's a mess. Li Quanqing looked up and saw that the peak of the mountain was ablaze with blazing clouds and demonic energy, which had already obscured the trace of the 5-element ring. When he saw this 5-colored mountain before, he had a divine sense warning that there was danger. He didn't believe that with the means of the Changsheng Dao, he would not discover the crisis hidden in it and deliberately harm his own disciples, so he was not panicked. Of course, his biggest confidence was still the Yuanying puppet. Holding a 4th level spiritual treasure, he could fight against a Yuanying great cultivator. Li Quanqing stepped into the void and flew quickly towards the 5-element mountain. At the same time, he was particularly alert to the surroundings and alert to possible dangers. When he arrived at the foot of the mountain, Li Quanqing and others had already arrived. They all looked solemn, watching this majestic mountain fall apart. Don't be nervous, fellow Taoists, it's just the residual souls of a few Yuanying great demons causing trouble. My senior brother Zhao has already had a way to deal with it. As a cultivator of the Xian dynasty, Li Quanqing was the most relaxed one, with a smile on his face, and had expected it. Li Quanqing was not afraid either, he was just curious about the cause and effect. Daoist Quanqing, we are confused now, could you explain it in detail? Chapter 342, Overcoming the Tribulation. It's okay to tell you the reason for this, it's just some long forgotten past events. Seeing everyone's solemn and inquiring eyes, Li Quanqing spoke calmly. He didn't worry about the safety of his brother Zhao at all. The reason why the 5-element sect was destroyed in the past was that in addition to the 100,000 monsters that turned into beast tides and attacked, there were also 3 Yuanying great monsters who joined forces to try to overthrow this ancient sect of the human race and snatch a sacred object. However, even though the 5-element sect did not have a Yuanying great cultivator, it still dealt a heavy blow to the monster race with only a group of giant cultivators, and burst out with incredible combat power. Led by the last leader of the 5-element sect, the entire sect spared no expense, exerted its last heritage, and completely activated the 5-element ring. All the disciples of the sect used their strength to suppress these Yuanying great monsters in the beast tide, cutting off all vitality. Li Quanqing looked at the five-colored mountain in front of him, his eyes full of respect and admiration for the ancestors of the human race. However, the Yuanying great monster has such strong vitality. The strongest of the five elements act is no more than the great perfection of the Gengjin. They underestimated the secret of the Yuanshan baby, which is an existence that can cross the void with its soul. When my senior Chang Shengdao discovered this relic, he unexpectedly discovered that, although the bodies of the three monsters had been refined and killed, their spirits still existed. The spirits of the Yuanying monsters actually invaded the five-element ring. In these hundreds of thousands of years, they have been entangled and merged with the spirit of the weapon, and have completely turned into a monster, indistinguishable from each other. When everyone heard this, they all couldn't help but marvel at the tenacious vitality of the Yuanying monsters, and at the same time they were a little worried. Since you have already noticed the abnormality, why didn't the senior Chang Shengdao take action himself to wipe out the spirits of the three monsters? Fang Rulang of the beast taming sect asked with curiosity and confusion. He couldn't understand this approach. Isn't this considered deliberately harming the younger disciples? The great demon's true spirit and the five-element ring spirit are integrated into one. If they are forcibly erased, this powerful spiritual treasure will be severely damaged, and its grade will fall. What's more, if the opportunity is coincidental and the will is firm, this life-threatening danger will turn into a supreme opportunity. Li Quanqing looked at the top of the five-element mountain and suddenly saw a flash of lightning. His expression became a little solemn. It started. Please follow me and watch. Don't walk around, so as not to disturb the layout of my predecessors in the Immortal dynasty. While waving his sleeves, he took out a treasure mirror, which burst into a light silver glow, and immediately reflected the scene on the top of the mountain. Li Quanqing also looked at it, and saw that at the top of the five-element mountain, the five-element were like tides, and the demon clouds were like the sea. A white skeleton was sitting quietly, wearing a Taoist robe embroidered with five-colored clouds, showing the scene of the five-element life and death, and it was still full of spiritual light. In the arms of this skeleton, the five-element ring quietly floated, emitting dazzling rays of light, like a small sun, dyeing the white bones colorful. Zhao Qian sat cross-legged opposite, his palm touched the five-element ring, his eyes closed, a bit of pain appeared on his face, and blood flowed from his 7 orifices like a small snake. Even if there is only one true spirit left, these dead Yuanying demons will naturally pursue living things, want to seize their bodies, and be reborn again. Li Quanqing listened to these words and observed carefully. He immediately noticed that on the surface of the five-element ring, a series of tiny demonic auras escaped and drilled into Zhao Qian's Niwen palace, intending to seize his body. He noticed that the five-colored treasure light emitted by this five-element ring was not perfect and integrated. Instead, it was clearly divided, and turned into 2 colors in confrontation. Among them, the 3-colored treasure light of blue, and gold was entangled with demonic auras, and it seemed to have the upper hand. It was obviously the origin of the spiritual treasure occupied by the 3-headed demon. The remaining red and yellow lights were somewhat dim, and there was no demonic aura permeating. Instead, they gave people a sense of sacredness, which was obviously the power of the weapon spirit resisting. The 3 Yuanying demons control the power of wood, water, and gold respectively. Does this represent the great way that their original demon bodies practice? Li Quanqing grew up and remembered all these details in his mind. He looked at Zhao Qian, who was trembling with pain and fighting against the possession of his body, and he was also thinking about how to break the situation. After thinking about it, it seemed that there was only one way left. Sure enough, in the next moment, Zhao Qian's magic power soared into the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds, and awakening a supreme will. But he fought with the last bit of sobriety to forcibly induce the power of the Yuanying heavenly tribulation, and wanted to pull the 3 demons through the thunder tribulation together. At this moment, everyone present understood Zhao Qian's plan, and stared at him intently. Li Quanqing was the same, and even held his breath. For a Gengjin cultivator, being able to witness the nascent soul tribulation with one's own eyes is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and one must not miss any details. Rumble. The dark clouds in the sky rolled, like boiling water, making a deafening roar, and the thunderlight gathered in the sky, turning into a mighty heaven. Even if this place is a cave of its own, it is still difficult to stop the power of the heavenly Dao, which turned into a thunder tribulation. piercing through the Qingming, and wanted to tear the sky apart. Relying on the last control of his body, Zhao Kan actually let go of all defenses and took the initiative to crash into the heavenly tribulation, as if he wanted to live towards death. This action obviously frightened the confused big demon spirit in the 5-element ring. After hundreds of thousands of years of tempering, even if the 3 nascent soul big demons still had their remaining true spirits, their spiritual wisdom was still scattered, leaving only the instinct to survive, and they devoured and merged with the spirit of the instrument. This is also the reason why Li Quanqing stopped everyone from climbing the 5-element mountain, to avoid providing the big demons with a second target to seize the body, and disrupting the arrangement of the longevity Dao. At this time, the big demons had only one choice, which was not to watch Zhao Kan's body being destroyed in the thunder tribulation. So they used the power of the 5-element ring to the fullest, and actually took the initiative to resist the thunder tribulation that fell from the sky in order to save this body. Boom. One after another, the thunder fell, the sound was rolling, the power of the sky was mighty, the whole 5-element mountain was shaken by the thunder, and it gushed out monstrous essence in demonic clouds. Li Quanqing stared at it without blinking, and even took out the image bead to copy the scene in the mirror. The other giant and cultivators did the same. There were only 9 giant and thunder tribulations, but there were as many as 36 Yuanying thunder tribulations, which was amazing. Even with the protection of the 5-element ring, Zhao Kan was still seriously injured, his skin cracked, and blood flowed from the corners of his mouth. Boom. When the last thunder tribulation fell, the whole 5-element ring shone brightly, supporting a dazzling 5-color light curtain for protection. Snap! Exclamation mark. Even so, there was still a ray of lightning as thick as an arm that penetrated through the numerous obstacles and directly split Zhao Kan's body. From his dantian, a golden red flame swept out, turning into a phoenix flapping its wings and flying, finally holding a golden elixir in its mouth, shining brightly. Chapter 343 Nascent Soul Demon. 36 heavenly thunders flashed by. With the protection of the 5-element ring, Zhao Kan seemed quite relaxed, and even his originally painful expression was somewhat relieved. Baptized by the thunder tribulation, the great demon spirit inside the 5-element ring was also severely damaged, and became more and more eager to take over the fresh body in front of him. Cry! Exclamation mark. The phoenix bird cried loudly, holding a golden red Dao Jinden, and flew out from Zhao Kan's dantian in the abdomen, swallowing up all the thunder light and essence in the sky. The thunder tribulation has passed, and what remains is the baptism essence rewarded by heaven and earth, which builds the foundation of the nascent soul for the cultivator. It can be seen that Zhao Kan's golden elixir is becoming more and more flawless, round and full, with no flaws in the Dao, and even the color tends to be crystal clear, and a baby curled up in it can be seen. Li Quanqing also gained a lot from watching others pass the tribulation, and even felt a little tired, shocked by the vastness of the power of heaven. Fortunately, he has the 5 Thunder Mialuo umbrella, which can be transformed into a protective treasure to assist in overcoming the tribulation. In terms of the power of resisting the thunder tribulation, it is no weaker than this unactivated 5-element ring. Everyone did not relax. Since the heavenly tribulation has passed, the next thing is the most dangerous in a demon disorder. A narrow escape. The great Dao Jinden is suspended above Zhao Kan's head, entrusting the true spirit, releasing an extremely abundant life essence, and blooming vigorously. At this time, the great demon's true spirit hidden in the 5-element ring finally couldn't bear it anymore, and all rushed out, wanting to seize this golden elixir and the body. It was at this moment that the surrounding time and space seemed to stagnate for a moment. Then, the mist that was there and not there filled the surroundings, disturbing time and space, like a dream, covering Zhao Kan's body. The outer demon has arrived. Li Quanqing looked at the misty mist that appeared on the mirror, and in a trance, he actually fell into layers of illusions. This illusion was very realistic. Not only him, but the other 3 giant and cultivators were also affected, with confusing scenes reflected in their eyes. Fortunately, they were not facing the inner demon in person after all, but with the help of magic weapons. The power of the illusion was not strong, and it was comparable to the level of ordinary giant and supernatural powers. In Li Quanqing's Niwen Palace, the bright moon was hanging high, turning into a Taiyin dragon and roaring. The dragon's roar was clear and melodious, completely shattering those illusions. He blinked his eyes, but in just 2 breaths, he broke free from it and regained his clarity. Dao Li Quanqing, you are extraordinary. A faint laugh came, and it was Li Quanqing who was looking at him, breaking through the illusion faster than a breath. You are too flattering. The inner demon is really powerful and unpredictable. I don't know what kind of disaster Brother Zhao is going through at this moment, Li Quanqing exclaimed, still a little frightened. As they talked, 2 monks from the beast taming sect also woke up one after another. They were fine, but they didn't dare to stare at the mist for a long time. At this moment, the scenery in the mirror changed again. Zhao Khan's golden elixir suddenly shone brightly, and the flames were like a tide, completely piercing through the mist. Just like ice and snow melting, accompanied by the unwilling roar of the inner demon, all the mist dissipated and disappeared without a trace. The inner demon has passed, and the nascent soul will be formed. Brother Zhao's speed of passing the tribulation is so fast, it feels so easy. It seems that he is not seriously affected by the inner demon. Fang Rulan was a little surprised when he saw this scene, which was different from the records and the ancient books of the sect. Li Quanqing knew very well that this guy really turned the life and death crisis into his own opportunity. The 3 great demon spirits intended to take over the body and entangled with Zhao Khan's soul. It is equivalent to having a nascent soul cultivator personally escorting and experiencing the inner demon chaos together, so the power will naturally decrease a lot. After all, the inner demon targets the golden elixir creatures, which is not enough for the nascent soul who has already survived the catastrophe. I have the holy infant pill in my hand. I can use the holy light to protect my true soul and spirit. With the help of the reincarnation beads to polish my heart, it is not a problem to survive the inner demon catastrophe. Maybe it is easier than Zhao Khan at this moment. After witnessing a complete nascent soul catastrophe, Li Quanqing is undoubtedly much more relaxed and has greater confidence. Exclamation mark. The thunder of the catastrophe passed away, the inner demon dissipated, and Zhao Khan had no difficulty breaking the pill and becoming a baby at this moment. I saw that the surface of his golden elixir suddenly appeared feather-like cracks, and then it exploded and turned into a pair of flaming wings, gently flapping. In the blazing flames, a nascent soul baby was born, no more than 3 inches tall, the color of colored glaze, but it had a sense of overwhelming the world. But at the same time, the most dangerous moment has also arrived. I saw wisps of pure demonic energy entangled on this newborn Yuanying. The 5-element ring slowly descended, directly imprisoning the body of the Yuanshan baby, unable to move. Suddenly, this 3-inch Yuanying opened his eyes, and Zhao Khan's voice came out from his mouth, shouting, "Spirit of the artifact, I will help you completely destroy the demons." Then he actually ignited the Yuanying origin, turning it into a raging divine fire, covering the surface of the 5-element ring, making the red light flourish, wanting to completely suppress the origin of the gold, water, and wood spirit treasures occupied by the 3 demons. Although the 5-element ring artifact spirit has survived for hundreds of thousands of years, it also has a trace of obsession, which is the hatred of destroying the sect, representing the hatred of the thousands of monks who died in the 5-element sect. At this time, with the help of a Yuanying origin, this obsession and hatred suddenly broke out, mercilessly, wanting to perish with the true spirits of the 3 big demons. Zhao Khan quietly watched his own avenue foundation burning. His expression was neither happy nor sad, and his whole body exuded a charm of great liberation. On the surface of the 5-element ring, the red light was blazing, and then the demonic energy took the upper hand. The 5-colored light flickered endlessly, and there was indescribable chaos. The 3 demon spirits wanted to cut off from the artifact spirit, abandon this spiritual treasure, and quickly seize the body of a human cultivator, to be reborn and live again. How could the 5-element ring artifact spirit let them do as they wished? The 2 sides had been entangled for hundreds of thousands of years, and had long been indistinguishable from each other. It was at this time that another object flew out from Zhao Khan's body, and the phoenix bird cried loudly, and the rays of light were blazing. It was an ancient zither, engraved with the true form of the divine phoenix. It was his life-saving magic weapon, which had the foundation of a 4th level spiritual treasure. After experiencing the catastrophe of the nascent soul, The next moment, the fire Li Quanqing made a mournful sound and actually hit the surface of the 5-element ring directly, giving the 3 demon spirits the final fatal blow. Seeing the magic weapon he had nurtured for 100 years torn into pieces and the spirituality dissipated, Zhao Qian couldn't help but flash a trace of regret in his eyes. But then, his eyes were as firm as a mountain again. That was the pursuit of the longevity path, which would never be extinguished. The self-explosion of Li Quanqing was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. The 3 monsters were completely suppressed, and the weapon spirit had the upper hand, and was about to perish with the other party. With a click, with hundreds of thousands of years of unwillingness, the 3 Yuanying monsters actually detonated the 5-element ring from the inside before their souls were completely scattered. The originally smooth and flat surface of the ring suddenly cracked into spider web-like cracks, and the spiritual light dimmed, releasing unparalleled mana fluctuations. The weapon spirit was already severely injured, and suffered this disaster again. Its origin was damaged. It was like a candle in the wind, with only the last wisp of confused thoughts transmitted out. It was grateful for Zhao Qian's kindness, helping it to get rid of its obsession, completely destroy all the monsters, and fulfilled the promise to the last master of the 5-element sect that day: guard the sect, and kill the monsters. Then, submit to me. Zhao Qian's nascent soul gently broke free from the restraints, and held the 5-element ring in his hand. Even though he was almost dead, and fell back to the golden core realm, he was still frighteningly calm. Sensing his thoughts, the weapon spirit hesitated for a moment, before conveying a sense of submission. At the moment of death, it acknowledged the identity of the young cultivator in front of it. My great path is complete. The next moment, Zhao Qian's face showed a relieved smile, and without any reservation, he completely ignited his blood and bones. His nascent soul, his flesh, his magic power and even his soul, all turned into flames and burned. Along those gaps, all drilled into the 5-element ring. The divine fire was raging, tempering immortality. The blood-colored flames bloomed and burned fiercely. There was no trace of Zhao Qian on the spot, only a 5-colored ring was left, and he was reborn in nirvana. Luckily, senior brother Zhao has entered the gate of immortality. Li Quanqing looked at this shocking scene, but laughed out loud, clapping his hands, and was once again very happy to witness the road of immortality with his own eyes. Boom. After losing the suppression of the 5-element ring, the entire 5-colored mountain could no longer bear it, and exploded, breaking into pieces, and 5 spiritual lights of different colors emerged from it. These streams of light danced in the air, crisscrossing, breaking huge rocks one by one, emitting overwhelming divine power and infinite spirit. It can be seen that in the deepest part of the original 5-colored mountain range, countless corpses of monsters were suppressed, and there were even 3 extremely huge dead bones, which were still fierce even after death. Although Li Quanqing had not yet recovered from the madness of pursuing the path of immortality, under the traction of the aura, he also directly stared at the water blue streamer. For a time, several giant and cultivators fought for it at the same time. Chapter 344 5-element spiritual pearl. The towering mountain peaks were torn apart, the rocks pierced through the clouds, rumbling, and 5 streams of light flew out of them, with different colors. In just a moment, Li Quanqing stared at the water blue stream of light, and the aura in the dark pulled it, and even the mana in his meridians cheered and resonated. The 4 giant and monks attacked at the same time, and they had a tacit understanding with each other. They each stared at a stream of light, and did not fight to plunder. Li Quanqing turned into a ray of light, and soared into the sky, directly drilling into the collapsed mountains. The void around him flew vertically and horizontally, crushing the huge rocks one by one. He flew at an extremely fast speed, and with his own mana, he finally caught the blue stream of light in his hand. The extremely rich water essence rushed in his face, and the air around him began to rise with a touch of moisture. This is. Li Quanqing held the ball of light in his hand, and looked at it curiously. After the light dissipated, it turned into a water blue spirit bead, emitting bursts of the sound of rushing rivers. In terms of power alone, it should be no less than a 4th level nascent soul spirit treasure. He had several spiritual treasures in his hands, so he naturally had a lot of say. He could tell at a glance that the grade of this treasure was extremely precious. At this time, the other 3 people also got the gems corresponding to the spiritual root attributes, and they were all a little happy and quite satisfied. In the end, everyone's eyes could not help but naturally fall on the last red stream of fire, the flames burning, like the sky fire coming down, cutting through the sky. But suddenly a 5-color magic power swept down from the highest point above the head, like a long rainbow, and swept away this fire spirit bead directly, disappearing without a trace. Li Quanqing felt quite regretful, knowing that it was Zhao Qian who took action, and he could only do nothing. Now that the other party has been promoted to nascent soul, even if the foundation of the physical body does not exist, all the spirit and energy in the body have been integrated into the 5-element ring, but it can still be called a nascent soul creature, and the combat power is extremely strong. Even because of the long lifespan of the spirit, the other party can really be called immortal, and opened the door to immortality. Of course, there is a price. It is limited by the grade and material of the 5-element ring. If you want to make further progress in cultivation, or even break through the transformation of the spirit, you will have to work 10 times harder than a normal human cultivator. In the eyes of the ancient immortal cultivators, this is undoubtedly a side door, and is not up to the standard. There is no hope of being called a free and unrestrained immortal in this life. However, now that the world is broken, the spiritual energy is declining, the bottleneck of the transformation of the spirit is difficult to break through, and the ascension channel has long been cut off. Only those who follow the side door can live forever. You must die before you can live. Only by giving up everything and experiencing death once can you be considered to have truly embarked on the road to immortality. Li Quanqing seemed to understand why in the eyes of normal cultivators, people in the immortal way always appear as almost paranoid lunatics. The 4 giant cultivators gathered together, each holding a spirit bead in their hands, and looking at the scene below at the same time. After the collapse of the entire 5-element mountain range, the hundreds of thousands of demons buried there were revealed. The bones were piled up, and the evil spirits were rising to the sky. All the essence was refined into these 5 beads. Among the endless demon corpses, there were 3 corpses of Yuanian great demons, as big as mountains, standing tall and upright. Even if they had been lost for hundreds of thousands of years, they were still fierce and frightening. Just as Li Quanqing had guessed before, these 3 great demons were wood, gold, and water attributed demon beasts. The wood attributed demon beast was an ancient tree that covered the sky. It was the largest demon among them. It covered the sky and the sun. The withered trunk was like a pillar of heaven, and its branches pierced the sky. In addition, there was a golden winged rock, which was the top demon beast race in the world. Since ancient times, there has been no lack of 4th level great demons in the tribe, carrying the blood of the true spirit demon. The last water attributed monster beast could only be identified as a spirit turtle. Its body was also very huge. Its dark green shell was cracked, as deep as the abyss, which was frightening. Li Quanqing looked at the turtle monster, and felt that it looked familiar. Li Quanqing, who was standing next to him, had already recognized it. He was very knowledgeable, and said with a hint of surprise, "This is actually a longevity turtle." Li Quanqing was naturally very familiar with this famous monster beast. He had one in his own fish pond. It was lazier than a stone in the mud. But he didn't expect that when the name of the longevity turtle came out, everyone's eyes fell on Fang Rulang. Li Quanqing was a little confused. Why did Brother Fang raise a longevity turtle? He was familiar with this guy, and knew that he raised a golden elixir level earth dragon turtle. He was from the beast taming sect, and had a good background. I'm afraid that fellow Daoist Li doesn't know that I was born in the Xiangui Fang family. My Xiangui ancestor has a special spirit body, which is to raise a 4th level longevity turtle. Fang Rulang did not hide anything, and directly told the whole story. He was actually born in a Yuanying family. Xiangui ancestor. Li Quanqing chewed on this name, and suddenly felt familiar. Most cultivators have the ability to remember everything they have seen. Everything they have seen, and memories will be stored in the depths of their souls for easy access at any time in the future. At this moment, he thought about it, and immediately found the reason. He had indeed heard of this name before. When Li Quanqing got the eggs of the longevity turtle, he was troubled by the difficulty of hatching. He looked through all the books on turtle monsters in the Sutra Pavilion, and found a record of a giant and cultivator. Xiangui Zenren, Chapter 42. According to ancient books, this Xiangui elder was born in a humble family and depended on a longevity turtle for his life. In order to avoid the enemy, he hid in the secular world several times, dispersed his power and cultivated again, and finally at the age of 120, he successfully broke through the foundation building realm. In the end, he broke through the golden elixir and cultivated his own longevity turtle to the 3rd level, which is also the only case in the record. I don't know how many years have passed, and this senior Xiangui is still alive, and even broke through to the Yuanying's engine. Li Quanqing was slightly shocked, as if the characters in the ancient books had come into reality, and looking back suddenly, they were still active in the world. Fang Rulan held a yellow earth spirit bead, and looked at the 3 monsters below. He looked helpless. My luck is as bad as ever. Even if I get a treasure, it is not as powerful as the 3 Taoist friends. You are wrong. If I'm not mistaken, the 5 element sect wants to imitate the legendary fairy treasure, 5 element bead. According to the ancient artifact books, even in the fairy world, 5 element bead is still one of the most powerful fairy artifacts, known to be able to evolve a fairy land and carry countless lives. These 5 spirit beads are of the same origin and are passed down from generation to generation. In terms of power, there is not much difference between them. Although he said so, everyone also knew that, now that the 5 spirit beads were scattered, it would be difficult for them to meet again and exert their true power. Everyone talked about the ancient secrets for a while, and then turned their eyes to the corpses of the 3 Yuanying monsters. Even though the essence has been refined away, the corpses of these great monsters are still precious, and are rare treasures. The 3 forces, Changsheng Dao, the beast taming sect, and Li Quanqing, who was alone, just divided these bones equally to show fairness. The half-demon of the Xianpeng Jin family looked at the water spirit beads in Li Quanqing's hand with flashing eyes, and wanted to say something. But with the flash of the void scissors, cutting through layers of space, leaving no trace, he immediately shut his mouth. Fang Rulan was in a very high position, and wanted to use the remains of the golden winged dappen to exchange for a 4th level longevity turtle for the sake of his ancestor. Li Quanqing declined politely, saying that he also raised a longevity turtle, and that this corpse would be of great use to him. Fang Rulan was immediately full of regret and even suggested that he could bring the longevity turtle to visit the Fang family in the future to exchange experiences in raising turtles. After everyone finished dividing the spoils, there were also 5 colored clouds blooming above the sky, and a powerful idea swept out. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345 Departure. Duo! Exclamation mark. A light sound resounded, sweeping across the entire ruins, echoing in all directions, and shaking the sky. Then, 5 colored clouds bloomed, dazzling and dazzling, stretching across the sky, stretching endlessly, turning the entire sky into a colorful dome. A ring jumped out from the sea of clouds, circulating the 5 element of energy, humming softly, appearing quite happy and excited, and slowly descended from the highest point. Then, the sky was full of rosy clouds, gathering into a slender figure, and the 5 colored clouds gathered, and turned into a Taoist robe draped over him, outlining the shape of a lotus god, lifelike. We pay our respects to Senior Zhao. Li Quanqing and several others saluted respectfully. Even though he had been chatting and laughing with Zhao Qian before, and they were friends of the same generation, his status had changed drastically at this time. No need to be polite, everyone. We will definitely meet again on the path of Yuanying in the future. There is no need to be modest. Zhao Qian smiled slightly, holding up a fiery red spirit bead in his palm. The 5 colored ring behind him gently rotated, turning into a circle of flames, interweaving into the shape of lotus and phoenix. He waved his sleeves lightly, and the energy in the sky gathered, and turned into 4 cushions suspended between heaven and earth, inviting everyone to sit and discuss. Li Quanqing sat cross-legged on the cushion in the void, looking at this person after the breakthrough. It was really a big change. The original pure fire magic power was completely changed to the foundation of the 5 element. In addition, every move has a certain sacred quality, not as vivid as flesh and blood, but more of an indescribable purity. That strange feeling actually reminded him of his own incense gods, who also used magic weapons as the foundation, entrusted their own true spirits and lives, and sought immortality. The level of the 5-element ring is already very high. Now that he has broken through, Zhao Kan's strength is at least in the late nascent soul stage. He has really ascended to heaven in one step. Li Quanqing carefully sensed with his soul, and was immediately amazed. You know, every advancement of a nascent soul cultivator is unimaginably difficult, and often requires hundreds of years of hard work, and even no progress. Zhao Kan, however, is not ordinary. He broke through the nascent soul in less than a day, and soared like a rocket. He reached the late nascent soul stage, and even the nascent soul great perfection stage, ranking among the top cultivators in the world, and he is proud of the heroes. Damn it, this is the real cheating. Even with the golden finger, Li Quanqing couldn't help but feel a little envious. The magic method of the immortal way is really useful. It seems that there must be a god transforming combat force in this sect, and there may even be more than one. I'm now able to cultivate the great Dao, thanks to your great help. I cannot repay you enough, so I will tell you about my experience of breaking through the nascent soul. Zhao Kan began to talk. This is a common practice in the world of immortal cultivation. Whenever there is a breakthrough, they will preach, which will benefit many later cultivators. This nascent soul preaching lasted for 7 days and 7 nights. Zhao Kan built his foundation with the 5-element ring, and also inherited some of the original memories of the instrument spirit. Therefore, he is particularly proficient in the 5-element Great Dao, which makes people fascinated. When the preaching ended, the exploration of the ruins naturally came to an end. It can be seen that the longevity Dao obviously has other arrangements for this 5-element cave heaven, which is not something that a giant and cultivator can plot. Li Quanqing, Fang Rulong and the other two exchanged glances with each other, and stood up, and saluted at the same time. Senior, you preached, and we benefited a lot. We still need to return to sort out the enlightenment. Now we will say goodbye and leave. Good. See you again in the future. Zhao Kan nodded slightly in agreement, pinched his fingers to form a seal, and the 5-element ring behind him gently rotated a circle. Suddenly, a space crack appeared out of nowhere, swallowing the 2 people from the beast taming sect into it, and disappeared without a trace. Li Quanqing looked around, and found that he was still in the same place, and immediately had a bad premonition. Dao Li Quanqing. Zhao Kan raised his eyes, and looked at him, with an expression that seemed to be smiling but not smiling, and his expression was inexplicable. Li Quanqing gritted his teeth and said, Senior, you are too kind. I wonder if you have any instructions, or need my help? Dao, don't be nervous. It's just that my body is in harmony with the 5-element ring. I can see through the entire ruins with one thought, and immediately found the magic power you left behind. The divine object in the sutra library fell into your hands. Zhao Kan spoke calmly and slowly, but it gave people great pressure, as if he had merged with the entire 5-element cave heaven. Li Quanqing was silent for a moment, and finally he honestly took out the fist-sized lotus seed. 5-color treasure lotus, it is really this thing. Zhao Kan looked at the lotus seed, but did not take it. He just used his soul to observe the missing vitality in it. Li Quanqing was stunned. This magical medicine is really called this name. I thought I just picked it up casually. Such a magical thing. The heaven and earth have feelings, and give it a real name. Any living being who sees it with their own eyes will feel it, and blurt out the name. After Zhao Kan explained, he observed carefully and finally sighed. It's a pity that it is really like what the spirit of the instrument remembers. The vitality is destroyed and nirvana fails. I'm afraid it will never break out of the seed again. He did not take this thing away. Even with the foundation of the way of longevity, it is difficult to make up for the life source consumed. Moreover, there is a cycle of cause and effect between heaven and earth. At that time, the Yuanian cultivator of the Changsheng Immortal dynasty explored the ruins here, but was afraid of the big monster, and failed to take this thing away. In the end, the 5-color treasure lotus, such a magical thing, fell into the hands of Li Quanqing. It has its own destiny, and it is difficult to interfere. The higher the level of cultivation, the more restrained one's actions become, and it is difficult for one to act arbitrarily. Senior, are you interested in the 5 Spirits Sutra? Li Quanqing collected the lotus seeds and took the initiative to propose this nascent soul inheritance, wanting to trade with the Changsheng Dao. The inheritance left by the 5-element ancestor. I learned a part of it in the memory of the instrument spirit. It is indeed a rare scripture of the great Dao. Zhao Qian thought for a moment. I wonder what you want. I heard that the Immortal dynasty can improve the spiritual energy level of the cave heaven and blessed land. 1 scripture in exchange for a 4th level spiritual vein. Li Quanqing proposed his own conditions. An ancient scripture with harsh cultivation conditions in exchange for a spiritual vein. It sounds like I'm at a disadvantage. Zhao Qian smiled softly. I agree. Dao is extremely talented and has great luck. He will never stop at the golden elixir in the future. It can be regarded as a good relationship. Li Quanqing was also very happy. He directly took out the lotus pond with the scripture and handed it to the other party. He was not afraid of breaking the contract and believed in the credibility of the Changsheng Dao. This is a secret code of the 5-element sect. I happened to learn it through the memory of the spirit of the weapon. It will be cracked in 3 days. Zhao Qian spoke, stroking the cold and rough stone pool, full of confidence. Li Quanqing stayed for another 3 days, and even released the 2 little guys Li Jinhan and Li Jinlian to explore this ancient ruins together. In the end, with the lotus pond and the translated 5 Spirits Sutra, Li Quanqing really left the ruins of the 5-element sect, and prepared to return to his family. Zhao Qian watched him leave, and suddenly looked at Li Quanqing next to him. Junior brother, have you found your way to the Great Road? The door to immortality is in sight. Li Quanqing played with the wooden spirit bead in his hand, smiled slightly, and was confident, with a straight posture like a pine tree. Chapter 346, Soul Enhancement. Li Quanqing left the 5-element sect ruins, flying in the sky in clouds, looking at the boundless East China Sea below, and finally couldn't help but relax. After Zhao Qian turned into the 5-element ring spirit, the pressure he put on him was too great, as if he had merged with the entire cave, similar to the god of heaven who controlled everything. That feeling was even a bit similar to the Immortal senior in the Xi'an ruins, with everything under control. He was also worldly wise, having come into contact with several Yuanian great monks, and even killed a 4th level monster with his own hands. But the invisible pressure he felt when facing Zhao Qian was really incomparable and incredibly powerful. It must be said that the way of practicing the longevity Dao, although it is a side door, is really enviable, and it can be said that it is a direct step to heaven. Fortunately, I also gained a lot this time, and even exchanged for a 4th level spiritual vein. After flying tens of thousands of miles in one breath, Li Quanqing finally felt a little tired. He released the Qingyu Qiu to travel, and no longer felt that nervous. It is not so simple to upgrade the level of the cave spirit vein. Even if there are immortal monks, it still takes about 20 years to prepare in advance. Li Quanqing believes in Zhao Qian's promise. With the other party's current strength, he can be regarded as a high-level immortal dynasty, and will not go back on his word. What's more, they also swore in the name of the heavenly way, and signed a contract. Even if the incarnation monk wants to violate the agreement, he needs to pay a price of almost falling. When they came, they spent a lot of time for the training of the 2 little ones, but the speed of the return journey was extremely fast. In just half a month, they saw the familiar sea scenery, and arrived at the Qingyu Sea again, and were about to return to the embrace of the long-lost family. Finally, I'm going home. Li Jinhan and Li Jinlian grabbed Dao King's scales, all showing a relaxed look, and then they felt an indescribable sense of fatigue. They didn't expect that the first time they left the family for training in their lives, they ran away for such a long distance, close to 1,000,000 miles of sea. They even saw the legendary ruins of the ancient Yuanying sect, which was more exciting than the lives of many giant cultivators. Ao King roared, and went directly into the Qingyu cave heaven. The sound of dragon roars resounded and echoed among the clouds. Go back and report your safety to your elders. Li Quanqing had a smile on his face. It would not be long before these 2 little guys would be able to break through the bottleneck of the late key refining stage and be respected as masters among the casual cultivators. He couldn't help But recall that, when he had just broken through the late key refining stage and became a family elder, he felt a little emotional. It has been so long. Moo! Exclamation mark. Aoking's dragon claws cut through the clouds, shook his head and tail, and threw the boy and girl out directly, and then his body circled and slowly landed above the fish pond. Li Quanqing took out the Hanhei bowl and released several giant monsters. When the cultivation reached this level, staying in the bowl every day was too narrow and prone to psychological problems. Of course, the void butterfly is an exception. This guy is a natural home animal. He likes the new space field of the vast sea cave heaven, which is convenient for absorbing the power of the void for cultivation. Li Quanqing sat cross-legged on the embankment and began to feed the fish in a long time. The bait was gently sprinkled with his fingertips, which immediately attracted many green jade carps to fight for it. Harvest a green jade carp in the middle stage of key refining, and reward a top-grade magic weapon green scale shield. Harvest a green jade carp with golden patterns in the late stage of key refining, and reward 2 drops of Shyanai spiritual liquid. The blue carps scrambled for food, slapping the water with their tails, splashing fierce waves, and even spitting water arrows from their mouths to snatch food from each other. On the broad foreheads of these spiritual fish, you can see light balls flashing from time to time, crystal clear and flawless white light. Li Quanqing took these light balls one by one, which was better than nothing for him. Unfortunately, there was no green jade carp in the great perfection of key refining, otherwise he could try to throw it into the dragon transformation pond to try to evolve his bloodline. Aoking, open the formation of the fish pond. Some big guys are ready to move. With the light between the claws of the blue moon dragon, the formation protecting the entire fish pond opened, and suddenly there was a monstrous roar. There were 13 blue-horned fish dragons, flying with their teeth and claws bared, their jade-like bodies covering the sky and the sun, like a group of dragons, and the majestic demonic energy turned into clouds and spread. These big guys called the wind and rain, and the rain fell into the fish pond, and hovered under Aoking's body. Li Quanqing was not stingy. He took out the bait made of the flesh and blood of the 3rd level monster and fed them. He also saw several light balls flashing between the dragon horns. Harvest a green horned fish dragon in the middle stage of foundation building, and reward a large spiritual energy group. Right square bracket asterisk 4. Harvest a green horned fish dragon in the middle stage of foundation building, and reward a Cheyenne Zenjing. Taiyin chapter, experience group. Unexpectedly, in addition to the 4 spiritual energy balls, the final reward also included a cultivation experience. Li Quanqing first collected the most common spiritual energy balls, held the most unique light ball, and gently crushed it. In the flashing light, countless experiences and knowledge entered the sea of consciousness in an extremely special way, and were refined and absorbed by him one by one. It is really the cultivation experience of Taiyin Yinfa. A hint of surprise flashed in Li Quanqing's eyes. He had refined most of the drops of Shyanai true water, and his cultivation of Zenhei magic power was extremely smooth. The Bahei inheritance was a family inheritance, which was also very easy. The Kanghei inheritance was assisted by the heavy water spirit liquid. Only the Taiyin inheritance was his weakness, and his cultivation progress was not very ideal. Now that he has obtained this cultivation experience, he has immediately made up for this shortcoming, and the power of his soul has increased a lot, and become more solid. Yin! Exclamation mark. In the Niwen Palace, the bright moon shone brightly, flickering like breathing, and then slowly split into a Taiyin dragon guarding the 4 directions. The Taiyin Giant long roamed in the ocean of spiritual power, tempering its body with the help of the vast sea of spiritual consciousness, like a lifelike creature. On the surface of each of its dragon scales, runes appeared, and the light intertwined and condensed, turning into an ancient scripture, reflecting the void. Li Quanqing's practice lasted for half a month before it slowly ended, and he completely digested this experience. He opened his eyes, his pupils were dark and warm, and there was no compelling divine light blooming, but it was more profound, like the starry sky that embraced everything. His spiritual power was enhanced, and the true spirit hidden in the golden elixir was nourished by the soul, and it also benefited a lot. I saw that a wisp of infantile energy began to spread in the depths of the indestructible golden elixir, changing the essence of the great golden elixir, and changing towards a transparent crystal. Li Quanqing also didn't expect that he hadn't even polished his practice to the extreme and advanced to the great perfection of the golden elixir. He had such an amazing change. Chapter 347, Late Gengjin Period. Li Quanqing looked at his golden elixir. The upper part was as blue as the sea, as blue as glass, like a combination of the sky and the ocean, as if gathering the mysteries of water and the world. The lower part was as deep as the abyss, blue almost black, with Dao traces intertwined, turning into starlight light shining, perfectly blending together. The extremely pure Shine magic power was running, constantly swallowing and contracting, as if it had its own breath, bringing an extremely powerful feeling. Since his soul grew, and his true spirit became stronger, a wisp of infant ki was actually bred inside the entire golden elixir, permeating the meaning of the great Dao. Li Quanqing tried to mobilize this wisp of infant ki to test its power, but unfortunately he got nothing in the end, and had to give up. He withdrew from the state of cultivation. This short retreat finally made up for the shortcomings of the soul. He could try to use the reincarnation beads to try to polish the heart of the Tao and reincarnate for 100 generations. Li Quanqing gathered his thoughts and looked at the fish pond. Those green-horned fish dragons had already dispersed and returned to the depths of Yulangtan to play. When the Hanhei Bowl is promoted to the 4th level spiritual treasure and the inner cave world expands again, we can consider raising these green-horned fish dragons in it. Li Quanqing made a plan in his mind and began to check the harvest and the 5 elements at this time, sorting and summarizing them one by one. The first is naturally the lotus seeds of the 5-colored treasure lotus. If they can be planted again and revived, the Li family will no longer have to worry about the elixir forming spiritual objects. Unfortunately, this matter is too difficult. To revive this divine object is no less than a cultivator's breakthrough of the nascent soul catastrophe. The next is the 5 Spirits Sutra, which explains the true meaning of the 5-element avenue. In terms of ancient mystery, it is close to the level of transformation, which is a rare ancient inheritance. Li Quanqing took out a leaf. The material is neither gold nor stone, but it is extremely hard and presents a colorful color. It is recorded with tadpole characters like tiny fly heads. But this is just an appearance. After his soul has touched these words, he can learn the real nascent soul scriptures, which were translated by Zhaokan from the lotus pond. It is ancient and mysterious. Li Quanqing had comprehended the real immortal inheritance Cheyenne Sutra, and could easily distinguish the authenticity, which was filled with an ancient atmosphere. Although he was not very interested in the 5-element rotation avenue, the water-based scriptures in it could still provide reference. What's more, Li Quanqing had to consider his own spirit beast and teach it how to comprehend this scripture. He released the wooden peacock from the Hanhei bowl, and between the emerald green feathers, a dazzling red had been stained, like a blazing flame. The 2 slender claws of the peacock demon were changing towards khaki, filled with the heavy breath of the earth, towering like a mountain, and comprehending the true meaning of unearthed in the ashes of the flames. Li Quanqing handed it the 5 Spirits Sutra, and the wooden peacock gave a clear cry, raised its head, and looked disdainful. How could the human race's scriptures be as powerful as my demon race's inheritance? In fact, this guy was actually very interested at the beginning, but unfortunately he fell at the first step when he just started to comprehend the scriptures. As a demon, it didn't even know the human language, not to mention those ancient and obscure immortal cultivation words, which made it dizzy. Li Quanqing was also a little helpless. The Great Way was connected. Whether it was the human race or the demon race, the essential cognition of cultivation was the same. In the end, he handed this arduous task to King Qiu. King grew up with him since childhood, and was quite spiritual. He had learned the human language long ago, and even knew many ancient immortal texts. It was most appropriate for it to be the teacher of the wooden peacock, and comprehend the 5 Spirits Sutra together. In fact, these spirit beasts like the dragon flame eagle, the Kanghei whale, and the jade scale beast all belong to the bloodline of the 5-element spirit beasts. They can comprehend this scripture, at least they can study the application of magic and supernatural powers in it. Li Quanqing stroked his chin. When the wooden peacock succeeded in cultivation, he would try to teach other spirit beasts to become illiterate and cultured up a civilized demon. Next, he continued to check the harvest, which was the skeleton of the 4th level longevity turtle. The huge turtle shell, as huge as a mountain, fell into the vast sea cave, occupying most of the sea surface, and the dark green skull poked out, reaching the depths of the clouds. Even though the flesh and blood had long disappeared, the huge skeleton was still towering into the clouds, and the ancient lines crisscrossed, like the abyss between the mountains. Even on the surface of the 4th level Wanxiao turtle's body, there were still many corpses of the demon clan, like an island carrying all things, going to the underworld together. The Wanxiao turtle, moving, he raised was climbing between the skeleton mountains, covered with moss and water plants, slowly climbing up, and water drops dripping on the edge of the turtle shell. For the Wanxiao turtle, this was undoubtedly an opportunity to absorb the blood and breath of this demon clan elder, and accelerate its own growth. The Wanxiao turtle clan has special talents, and there is no bottleneck in breaking through the realm. It is not very dependent on resources, but it takes too long to consume it, so there is no need to worry about it forming a pill spirit. Li Quanqing's eyes fell on moving, and his heart was slightly relieved. This can be said to be one of the few spirit beasts that he is least worried about. Now, there are spirit beasts that are about to face the bottleneck of the golden elixir. In addition to the wooden peacock, there is also the Kanghe whale, who has also cultivated to the state of great perfection in the foundation building. But after thinking about it, he seems to have not been able to help Kanghe whale too much. He can teach it some of the heavy water mysteries of the Cheyenne Sutra. Li Quanqing's eyes swept across Yulong Island, and his fingers fell gently. Suddenly, the sky was full of aqua blue clouds. A crystal clear gem flew out, flowing with a mysterious breath. Gugua. On the surface of the water spirit bead, the treasure-like toad was holding the surface of the bead tightly, not letting go at all, greedily swallowing the treasure contained in it, with an intoxicated look. It can be seen that this guy's cultivation has also reached the great perfection of the foundation building, and is even transforming towards the golden elixir realm. As a beast of heaven and earth, this guy has no bottleneck. It's just that the light ball rewards opened in the past really didn't have too many surprises. It was quite standard, and Li Quanqing didn't have much expectations. He played with the water spirit bead, and had initially figured out the function of this Yuanying spirit treasure. The offensive power is not very strong. After all, it is only part of the complete version of the 5 spirits pearl. It is more of an aid to the cultivation of water spirit root cultivators, and can even be used to purify the Cheyenne spiritual liquid. Li Quanqing played with the cool and warm water spirit beads, and looked at the 5 sutra pavilions, and then flew towards the family sutra pavilion. Now it is in charge of Li Quanqing, who carefully comprehends the great way of formation, and has an ancient formation spirit to guide him. Of course, the real manager of the Sutra Pavilion is still the old man Li Zongzhuo, who has been transformed into an incense spirit and now has the strength of the late stage of foundation building. Li Quanqing handed over the 5 Sutra Pavilions to them to expand the family's heritage, so he didn't have to worry about these trivial matters. Li Quanqing's cognition is really good. After the guidance of the formation spirit, he actually recognized these 5 elements X divine treasures, which is surprising. Li Quanqing didn't care. After disposing of these spoils, he floated away. Time passed bit by bit, and in a blink of an eye, more than 10 years had passed, enough for the child to grow up. Li Quanqing was about to celebrate his 100th birthday, truly entering the ranks of the immortals, and becoming a freshly minted senior in the world of immortal cultivation. With the help of the water spirit pearl, his cultivation was much faster, and he also consumed the large spiritual energy group created by the green-horned fish dragons. Finally, on this day, he sat cross-legged in the cave, with the spirit pearl suspended above his head, the glow of the sea, his magic power surging, and his aura rising steadily. He successfully launched an attack towards the late stage of the golden core. Chapter 348, Jade Sea Heritage. In the cave, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered, and spread out as a spiritual tide, rippling the water in the fish pond. Li Quanqing sat cross-legged in the void, his magic power surging endlessly, his momentum kept rising, and he rushed towards the bottleneck of the late Jiandan period. Above the Shinling bone, the water spirit bead was quietly suspended, shining brightly, filling the room with brilliance, making a sound like waves, and the sound of waves attracted the essence of heaven and earth from all directions. The whole breakthrough process was very smooth. Li Quanqing polished this bottleneck for a long time, and with the help of the power of spiritual treasures and elixirs, he successfully broke through the late Jiandan period. Compared with the huge movement of the foundation building cultivators, when they broke through, Li Quanqing's current was much smaller, which was a more precise control of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The spiritual tide was surging, just permeating the entire fish pond, being drawn out from the depths of the earth, making up for the rapid improvement of Cheyenne magic power after the realm breakthrough. When all the strange phenomena disappeared, only a strong divine consciousness slowly spread, tyrannical and overbearing, permeating the entire Qingyu cave heaven, and seeing through everything. Only a few Li family cultivators could perceive this. In the retreat room, Li Quanqing restrained the powerful fluctuations of his magic power, his robes fluttering, and he once again returned to his former indifference, like a vast and calm ocean, looking unfathomable. He opened his eyes, and the spiritual light flashed in his pupils, revealing the boundless scene of the Milky Way, illuminating the entire secret room. Only one step away, the magic power is perfect, and then I can try to break through the nascent soul. Li Quanqing exhaled a turbid breath, and was quite satisfied with the progress of his own cultivation. He took steady steps, and was not in a hurry for success. Of course, before he really tried to break through, he must first upgrade the spiritual veins of Qingyu Cave Heaven to the 4th level, so that he could support the practice of Yuan Ying's engine. Li Quanqing moved his body, and his bones crackled all over his body. He was about to go to the fish pond, to relax for a while, and warm currents bloomed all over his body. That was a change from the deepest part of the blood, as if some kind of inheritance was reviving, sweeping around the body, and the sound of rushing rivers came from the flow of blood. Huolala. Li Quanqing looked inward, and felt warm all over, as if he was soaking in a hot spring, and his flesh, blood, and bones were all resonating. As the blood rushed, tiny words and symbols appeared one by one, turning into the scriptures of the Great Dao, imprinted in the blood. A mysterious breath of reincarnation like life and death bloomed, not an illusion, reaching the sky and the underworld. Behei, inheritance. Li Quanqing raised his eyebrows and immediately realized what happened. The immortals in the Cheyenne ruins mentioned that before the Behei god ascended, he did not leave a complete inheritance of the true water of reincarnation, but sealed it among the descendants of the bloodline. As the cultivation of the descendants of the bloodline improves, this ancient scripture will be revived again, just like the bloodline inheritance of the demon race in the early world. Obviously, Li Quanqing's current cultivation has reached the minimum requirement for awakening the inheritance of the Ajasi reincarnation. His bloodline has revived on its own, and the scriptures have manifested. The Heavenly River Sutra records that the inheritance is derived from these 7 true waters correspond to the cultivator's magical powers, souls, bodies, and so on, and each represents a great way of heaven and earth. For example, the Zhenhe inheritance focuses on magical powers, known as the Boundless Heavenly River, representing the purest great way of water, embracing all things in heaven and earth. The Ajasi inheritance corresponds to the cultivator's magical powers, turning the reincarnation in a single thought, controlling the enemy's life and death, and is the most domineering. Li Quanqing comprehended the scriptures in his body. It was not complete, with only the chapter on the golden elixir, but the power still moved him. In addition to the Ajasi inheritance, the Yellow Spring inheritance was also recorded. The two represent life and death, representing different extremes. After reading the entire scripture, it can be summarized into 2 magical powers in total. After mastering them, they are enough to dominate the golden core realm and are invincible. Mysterious light of the blue sky. Dead silence of the yellow spring. Li Quanqing looked inward and comprehended the scriptures, and finally comprehended these 2 magical powers. Beluo Guang is the way of life creation, which can be regarded as one of the most powerful healing magical powers in the world, enough to make the cultivators lose their limbs and live. Yellow Spring's death silence is the way of death and withering, which can display the death silence mysterious light, turn into a death sickle to harvest all things, making their vitality wither and dim. These 2 magical powers complement each other. Through the Yellow Spring's death silence scythe to harvest life, and then release a large amount of vitality with the Beluo Guang to heal oneself. It can be called an immortal body. It is a perpetual motion machine in a sense. Li Quanqing seriously comprehended it, but he felt that it was obscure and difficult to understand, ancient and mysterious, and his desire to practice was not very strong. Now his cultivation is too low. Once this inheritance is exposed, he will be hunted to the ends of the earth and flee to the four seas. Moreover, these two magical powers are just the introductory chapters of the Bihai inheritance. Later, they will be merged into one, turned into the light of life and death, and control all things. If one has sufficient comprehension and talent, he can use the divine light of life and death as the foundation to pry open the great road of reincarnation, and even finally comprehend the most powerful and mysterious law of time in the world. With a thought, he can manipulate the flow of time, turning a child into a withered old man in an instant, without vitality, and reincarnating. I can comprehend a little bit in my spare time, but unfortunately my comprehension is not high. It is likely that it will be a mirage if I want to comprehend the time of reincarnation. Li Quanqing retracted his gaze. At this time, the warm current that surged around his body had long disappeared, and the surging blood in his body returned to normal again. But as long as he stimulated a thought, he could read the Blue Sea Sutra at any time and comprehend the secrets of the blue sky and the yellow spring. It was really convenient. The way of blood inheritance of the demon race is indeed much more convenient than the jade slips and scriptures of the human race, but it is also easy to lead to the strong in the race being strong and the weak being weaker. On the contrary, there is no such flourishing as a human race. Li Quanqing secretly pondered the pros and cons of the two ways of inheritance. Although everyone is used to calling the demon race, this group is actually a hodgepodge in nature. It is not an exaggeration to call many demon beasts natural enemies, and no one knows how they merged into one race. In comparison, the human race is much purer, and everyone looks similar. This kind of appearance and blood relationship makes it easier to unite as one. Li Quanqing allowed himself to diverge his thoughts and empty his brain, which was a moment of relaxation after the tense breakthrough. When he finished his days, he suddenly felt clear-headed, comfortable all over, and indescribably relaxed. He restrained his emotions, opened the magic circle of the retreat room, and walked to the embankment. The water vapor was moist and green spirit fish swam in groups. Teacher, uncle. On the shore, two figures, one fat and one thin, stood. They were the two students, Li Jingui and Li Jinhan, who had made great progress in their cultivation. Li Jingui was originally a top-grade spiritual root, and he practiced very hard. During this period, he was preparing to try to break through the late stage of foundation building. He can be regarded as the golden elixir seed of the family. Li Jinhan stayed at the great perfection of key refining, and immediately honed himself, trying to be like his senior brother and break through to the foundation establishment stage without relying on external objects. Chapter 349 100th Birthday. Li Quanqing was quite satisfied with the progress of his two disciples. Their talents were top-notch even among their peers. He nodded gently and hummed as a greeting. Then he leisurely sat cross-legged on the embankment of the fish pond, took out a handful of bait, and began to feed them. Li Jingui looked at him, also sitting on the cold embankment, and said with a smile, "Master, your 100th birthday is coming soon. The family wants to celebrate it for you. It's alright. Just listen to the family's arrangements." Li Quanqing nodded lightly, not really caring. Water magic power can cultivate the body and nourish the vitality of the flesh. In addition, he had taken longevity pills in the past, and he rarely fought with others in recent years. In terms of lifespan alone, he can live for a full 600 years. A mere 100-year-old birthday is just a drop in the bucket. But he can ignore it, but the family can't. Over the years, his reputation as the giant and ancestor has become more and more famous. Because Li Quanqing is not well known, he is even praised as the #1 genius in the tens of thousands of miles of sea area. Now, all the newly grown casual cultivators regard him, the Han Hei Zenren, as an idol, or a life goal to pursue. Not to mention the new generation of the Li family, who are almost crazy. Many people even compete to worship Li Jinhan as their master. Has there been any change in the Shuhua sword sect in recent years? Li Quanqing touched the light ball on the forehead of a green jade carp and asked, just picking a topic. No, the sword sect has been declining over the years, and its strength is tepid. Many of the old generation of foundation building cultivators have passed away, and the young generation of cultivators has no one to take the lead. Even because those talented children in the Qingyu were snatched away by the giant sects such as Yanyu sect, the quality of the disciples recruited is getting worse and worse. But the foundation of the giant sect is still there. Relying on the support of that secret realm over the years, the Shuhua sword sect is still able to refine foundation building pills, and has not declined to a third-rate force. Li Jingui spoke in detail. In recent years, the Li family has been in its heyday. Even if there is no need to plant spies, someone will take the initiative to provide them with the secret information inside the sword sect. After listening to it, Li Quanqing's expression was still calm, and it was difficult to stir up the slightest ripple in his heart. Even if a giant and cultivator came out of the Shuhua sword sect again, he would not care, and directly sent a few spirit beasts to forcibly kill the other party. Even if the Gengjin sect held him accountable at that time, a sentence the monster beast is rampant. It has nothing to do with me can clear the apparent responsibility. Now that his strength has been improved, and he has the Ice Phoenix puppet in his hand, he is not particularly afraid of the Gengjin sect. Uncle, I also have something to report. At this time, the graceful legionnaire next to him also said that she was becoming more and more beautiful, with eyebrows like distant mountains, eyes like autumn water, skin whiter than snow, and a faint fragrance filling her sleeves. Tell me about it. Li Quanqing became interested. He knew that his niece was very silent and introverted, and rarely spoke on her own initiative. Last month, when I was out for training, I accidentally came into contact with a group of people who claimed to be from the Sitter family. They wanted to return to the Qingyu and asked me to report to you. Li Jinhan told him everything. It was obvious that he was set up by someone, but fortunately there was no malice, and he was not in danger of his life. Teo and Situ, it turned out to be this remnant family. Li Jingui frowned slightly. When the Sitter family was destroyed, he had not yet embarked on the path of cultivation. Although he had not come into contact with the Sitter family cultivators, he had heard of them. Li Jinhan was different. He had never even heard of it. It was only after reading ancient books that he understood it. After being a coward for so many years, the Sitter family is preparing to jump out again after seeing the shrinking power of the sword sect. Li Jingui sneered. He had no good feelings towards this family. After all, they were the rivals of the Li family in the past. Informed the Yun family of Zioyao Island about this. When the Sitter family was destroyed, they occupied the Taoan Islands in the end. They should be anxious. Li Quanqing said lightly. It seems that, when he killed Situ Luo and lost the protection of the giant and cultivator, the Sitter family has not had a good time in recent years, so they are ready to come back in disgrace. Unfortunately, the Li family has developed vigorously in recent years, and the younger brothers who followed behind them in the past have also made great progress in strength. For example, the Zioyao Yun family, which was originally the second family under the Sitter family, has become more and more prosperous in recent years. There are 6 foundation building cultivators in the open. The same is true for the Z family of Baosu and the Wang family of Tanghua. There are even many newly born foundation building families that have already divided up the second level spiritual vein islands. It is very difficult for the Sitter family to return again. Li Quanqing is thinking of leaving this secret line. When he breaks through the nascent soul in the future, he may be able to follow the clues and find the hidden place of the Huangquan sect. Then he will join forces with several nascent soul cultivators of the 4C sect to attack the door together and completely destroy this great threat lurking in the dark. The 4C sect now only lacks the inheritance of the Blue Sea, and the Huangquan sect is from the same source. I don't believe that the other party will not be tempted. In a blink of an eye, several months have passed, and it is finally Li Quanqing's 100th birthday. As early as half a month ago, the entire Qingyu Li family began to mobilize troops, and lights and decorations were hung everywhere. The golden longevity characters and red ribbons set off each other, which looked gorgeous and festive. And those who can get the invitation, without exception, are all the well-known forces and cultivators in the sea area today. Even the leader of a sect who has reached the state of foundation building perfection needs to be respectful and not be negligent in the face of the centenary banquet of the ancestor Quanqing. An invitation from Kingai Cave Heaven has even become the most popular and sought after item in the black market. Almost all cultivators want to see the true face of the ancestor. On this day, the birthday bell roared, white cranes flew together, and the spiritual light was dazzling, turning into a long rainbow that penetrated the entire cave heaven. Countless cultivators gathered like a swarm of bees. It was extremely rare that Li Quanqing finally took off his green Taoist robe and put on a bright red robe with the full 100 longevity characters embroidered on it, which looked particularly festive. He sat cross-legged in the hall suspended in the sky, overlooking the huge crowd of cultivators below, with a sense of pride that controlled the changes of mountains and rivers. I wish you longevity, eternal youth, and that you will soon embark on the path of yuanying. Only true Gengjin cultivators are qualified to enter this hall. For example, the 2 golden elixirs of Yanyu sect, the leader of Biwu sect, and the city lord of Hanshi Immortal City. Even the special envoy of Gengjin sect came here, and they had a deep friendship, and talked about alchemy every day. Li Quanqing responded with a smile, and inadvertently revealed a trace of the magic power of the late golden elixir, which immediately made everyone present feel awe-inspiring and their smiles more sincere. Seeing that the auspicious time had arrived, the Li family was preparing to start the birthday banquet. Suddenly, the wind and clouds in Kingai Cave Heaven changed, and a strong momentum swept across, and the calamity clouds gathered and bloomed. Is this someone condensing a golden elixir? Li Quanqing was stunned, and immediately became curious, and lowered his eyes with everyone else. Chapter 350 Kunli Dan. In the Kingai Cave Heaven, a strong aura rose to the sky, and the wind and clouds surged, turning into a red fire cloud, as if it was going to burn the entire sky. The first to discover this movement were naturally the many Gengjin cultivators in the hall, and they looked around with surprise and curiosity. Someone is forming a dan. Looking at the dark clouds gathering in the sky, the thunder rolling, and the power of heaven, Gengjin sect cultivator Zhao Qingmu suddenly spoke with a little surprise, and his eyes narrowed. The Kingai Li family was already powerful and rose rapidly. Now, in just a few decades, it has once again bred a Gengjin strongman. With such a prosperous fortune, even if he was born in a yuanying sect, he still felt a little bit of fear. Just like when the Shuhua sword sect destroyed the Situ family and cut off the birth of the Gengjin family in the sea area under its command. Gengjin sect is also not a good person, and it is difficult to allow another yuanying family to emerge from its affiliated forces again. Facing the questions from the people in the hall, Li Quanqing did not say anything. He was also somewhat surprised at this time. He looked at the place where the calamity clouds gathered, which was the direction of the family's weapon refining pavilion. A towering volcano stood, with thick smoke and boiling magma. In an instant, he understood who was the person who was going through the calamity. He became slightly nervous, hoping that he would not fail. Boom! Exclamation mark. A calamity thunder fell, tearing the sky apart. The light was dazzling and amazing. The might of heaven swept across with an indescribable terrible power. This time, even those key refining casual cultivators noticed it. They looked over one after another, wanting to find out the specific inside story. There were even foundation building cultivators who flew up and wanted to get closer and take a closer look. Then they were frightened by the might of the calamity thunder and trembled all over. Then they were expelled by the Li family cultivators. Crackling. The calamity clouds rolled, and silver white thunder fell one after another. The sound was deafening, and the sky was full of lightning gathering. For ordinary foundation building cultivators, this was undoubtedly a destructive force that they could not resist at all, and could only turn into ashes while wailing. However, several Gengjin true immortals found something wrong, and they all looked strange. Why is the power of this Gengjin thunder tribulation much smaller? It is far less terrible than the one I experienced when I passed the tribulation. It simply left no way for me to survive. True immortal Han Kai spoke with a little suspicion, and the snow white dragons around him swirled and entangled, breathing out cold air. A pair of dragon pupils flashed with strange light, and he actually found a faint demonic aura from the thunder tribulation. The remaining Gengjin cultivators had the same feeling. Overall, the power of this thunder tribulation was weakened by more than 30%, and the power of heaven was pervasive. Fellow Daoists, don't be anxious. Please wait a moment, and you will get the answer. Li Quanqing smiled slightly while everyone was talking. All 9 thunder tribulations fell, and the dark clouds rolled away, leaving only a strong breath of vitality rising into the sky, showing its own strength. In the midst of endless thunder, a golden red pill was spinning, completely washing away the last trace of demonic energy and transforming into the purest human magic power. A burly figure stepped into the air, standing like an iron tower, with overwhelming pressure and giving people a strong sense of oppression with every move. It was Li Quanqing who successfully refined the 3rd level demon pill left by the earth flame dragon. It turned out to be a fake pill cultivator. This is incredible. This demon pill looks quite powerful, and it matches the attributes of this Taoist friend. I'm afraid his combat effectiveness will not be weaker than that of a normal giant cultivator. I would like to congratulate Taoist friend Quanqing. The Li family has added another real person. The strength and foundation are no weaker than those ancient giant families that have been passed down for thousands of years. Zhao Qingmu smiled and clapped his hands. The pressure in his heart suddenly dissipated, and the smile on his face became much more sincere, no longer afraid. A fake pill cultivator with a broken future and no further progress in cultivation is still within the tolerance range of the Xingqian sect. Li Quanqing swallowed the golden elixir into his stomach, and his aura rose steadily. He fully experienced the unprecedented power. The source of life increased greatly, and his life was extended for hundreds of years. He just wanted to let out a long roar. After surviving this thunder tribulation, he was also seriously injured. His body was covered with blood and his eyes were bright. After swallowing up all the essence from all directions, he hurriedly went into seclusion. Crackling. In the raging of the remaining thunder, Li Quanqing, wearing a purple Taoist robe, emerged with a pervasive pressure and bowed in the direction of the hall. Obviously, it was he who just protected his own brother from the tribulation to ensure that there was no interference from outsiders. At this time, he noticed the gazes of many giant cultivators in the hall, and then he showed his figure, which was considered a greeting. Unfortunately, my Qingyu Cave Heaven spiritual vein is only at the 3rd level. Now I have to supply the cultivation of several giant and true immortals at the same time. It is really stretched and sad. Li Quanqing sighed softly, drawing the attention of several Taoist friends in the hall back, and no longer paying too much attention to that side. Everyone's face twitched slightly, and they complained in their hearts. If they really disliked it, they could just give us the extra giant and masters. You can't afford it, but we can. We have a lot of spiritual energy. The 100th birthday celebration continued, but with this thunder tribulation and golden jade in front of them, everyone was a little absent-minded. The monks who came to visit were even more so. They once again realized the power of the Li family, the undisputed overlord of the sea, and were trembling with fear. Li Quanqing was still very happy, and even wanted to hum a little tune, waving his hand to call a group of graceful fairies, playing music and dancing, so free and easy. We wish our ancestor Quanqing a long and long life. At the end of the banquet, all the Li family monks appeared between heaven and earth and celebrated together. The magic power turned into bright fireworks and bloomed, and the sound shook the world. This is the real 10,000 immortals coming to pay homage. The immortal power is vast, and the bright light shines through the past and the present. In order to gather these 10,000 cultivators, the Li family really used all their resources. Even the little kids who had just embarked on the path of cultivation were brought out to make up the numbers, babbling. The final effect was naturally shocking. Looking around, the sky and the ground were all filled with Li family members, and the magic weapons covered the sky and the sun. They released the kingly sword together, and the flying swords rang and turned into a green torrent, like a real dragon circling, and finally turned into the 4 big characters long live and unlimited. The sword energy was like a rainbow. Seeing this scene, Li Quanqing couldn't help laughing, feeling relieved, and the pride in his heart almost overflowed. After these years of development, the family that once lived in a corner has finally become incredibly powerful, and even has a bit of the demeanor of the immortals. I'm deeply pleased, and you deserve a reward. Li Quanqing waved his sleeves, and countless spiritual energy suddenly swarmed, turning into a spiritual rain that fell and drilled into the bodies of every member of the family. This was a miniature spiritual energy ball that he had accumulated for decades, all of which were awards from the Qingyu Carp at the key refining stage. At this moment, all of them were crushed and mixed with the spiritual veins of the entire Qingyu cave heaven. For a moment, drizzling rain fell, and the spiritual energy turned into surging white mist. All the key refining clan members benefited from it, and their cultivation improved a little, no less than taking a pill. From then on, the birthday banquet ended. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.